Chapter 5165. Seeing Sha Kongzi reminiscing about the past, Fu Zi looked at Ho Qing and waved his hand, indicating for him to leave. Ho Qing hastily bowed and saluted. He turned around and left. Who Xiaohua was, he didn't care. He also didn't care about what was recorded inside the jade strip. He was nothing more than a disciple on duty. The only thing he could do was to look after the Kunlun sect's door. While he was at it, he could also give that azure ape who wholeheartedly pursued the Tao a little bit of destiny. After Sha Kongzi finished explaining Xiaohua's origin, Xianjing didn't withdraw his divine sense from the jade slip. Instead, he was ecstatic. A faint pressure leaked out from his body from time to time, as if he was trying out some secret technique. Fu Zi, who was standing guard beside Xianjing, sighed, "This Xiaohua is really unlucky. Of all the times to come back, why did he have to come back now? Isn't he just looking for trouble?" Daoist Xinghui smiled, "Senior is wrong. Xiaohua is no longer a disciple of the Imperial Thunder sect. He can just stand by and watch the Imperial Thunder sect become a joke." Xiaohua's matter was already a big joke in the Imperial Thunder sect. Sha Kongzi nodded. The Imperial Thunder sect kicked out a nascent soul realm cultivator, and now that Xiaohua has returned, at this point, a smart nascent soul realm cultivator suddenly said in surprise, "Yes, why did Xiaohua not come back earlier or later? Why did he come back now? Could it be that he has been in the Immortal Union all these years? Isn't the Imperial Thunder sect master arranged by Luo Xingtian, him?" "Yes, yes." Fu Zi suddenly slapped his forehead and said, "This old man also remembered that Fairy Hong Xia and the Yi clan's young master were engaged in the Imperial Thunder sect. The Fortune sect master issued a summoning order and prepared to lead the disciples to besiege the Sky Patrol City. Fairy Hong Xia and the Yi clan's young master are engaged." Sha Kongzi was stunned. He felt that it was a little inconceivable and said, "Back then, Fairy Hong Xia didn't hesitate to fall out with the Cleansing Flower sect's Yunjichong for Xiaohua. How could she? This Xiaohua's ambition is not small." Daoist Xinghui randomly asserted, "He is probably Luo Xingtian's right-hand man." "Shut up." Without waiting for Daoist Xinghui's words, Xianjing roared and scolded Daoist Xinghui, "Don't blindly guess if you don't know. Don't say things you shouldn't. You listen to me clearly. It's Xiaohua. Daoist Master Xiao, who has the strength to cross the tribulation, has returned to the Dawn Rain continent." "Yes, yes." It was rare for Daoist Xinghui to see Xianjing so angry, so he hurriedly bowed and said, "Disciple understands, disciple." When he spoke up to hear, Daoist Xinghui suddenly raised his head and said, "What did sect master say?" There was Daoist Xiao who had the strength to transcend the tribulation. "You're not wrong, are you?" Previously, Xianjing's words were originally berating spiritual master Xinghui. He said it in a hurry, and everyone heard it vaguely. At this time, when spiritual master Xinghui asked, everyone's faces changed greatly. They also came to their senses and looked at Xianjing. Xianjing took a deep breath and did not answer Reverend Xinghui. Instead, he turned to look at Fu Zi and instructed, quickly send a disciple, no, personally, no, or." Seeing Xianjing at a loss, Fu Zi was also puzzled. Looking at the jade slip in Xianjing's hand, he whispered, "Sect master, you don't have to panic. Even if Xiaohua has the strength to transcend the tribulation, he is also..." "Oh, he was also a disciple of the Imperial Thunder sect. He has nothing to do with my Kunlun sect." Xianjing took a deep breath and transmitted his voice. Gu Yunzi sent a message. He saw Xiaohua and the Fire Mountain. Now, Xiaohua already has the strength of the Mahayana or transcending tribulation. For some reason, Xiaohua looked at Gu Yunzi favorably and gave a disciple selection method to my Kunlun sect. Ah. Hearing this, Fuyuzi unconsciously became happy and transmitted his voice. Isn't this solving the urgent problem of my Kunlun sect? Not only that. Xian Jing said again, in addition to this method of selecting spiritual roots, Xiaohua also gave a whole set of nascent soul cultivation methods from qi refinement to transcending tribulation, and some secret techniques to my Kunlun sect. Ah. Fuyuzi lost his voice and forgot to transmit his voice. How is this possible? After saying that, Fuyuzi realized something and hurriedly looked around, as if he understood Xian Jing's concern. Sure enough, Xian Jing transmitted his voice again. Now, those cultivation method jade slips are with Gu Yunzi. In this jade slip, there is only the method of selecting spiritual roots and a complete section of spirit severing cultivation method. Gu Yunzi sent a message, asking me to quickly complete the disciple selection. He is afraid that Xiaohua will spread these cultivation methods, and my Kunlun sect will lose the opportunity. I understand. Fuyuzi nodded and replied, Sect Master wants me to send disciples to welcome Gu Yunzi, but he feels that the disciples are not doing things properly and wants me to go personally. But if I go personally, it will attract the attention of other sects, so he wants Gu Yunzi to come back by himself. But if I let Gu Yunzi come back by himself, I am afraid that something will happen on the way. Yes. Xian Jing nodded and transmitted his voice, I have already thought it through. You immediately take this jade slip to find immortal Xian Qing and ask him to go out of the mountain to find Gu Yunzi. After immortal Xian Qing goes, you take my sect master's order and start recruiting disciples as soon as possible. According to this method of selecting spiritual roots, no matter which country the disciples are from, the more the better. Okay. Fuyuzi nodded and raised his hand to take the jade slip. He transmitted his voice, Disciple will go now. Oh, in fact, if so, sect master might as well go see immortal Xian Qing himself. Xian Jing was just about to hand the jade slip to Fuyuzi, but he remembered something and engraved the cultivation method in the jade slip into another blank jade slip. Then, he handed the jade slip to Fuyuzi and said, Of course, it is suitable for me to go. But if Xiaohua comes back, won't Imperial Thunder Sect be lively? Naturally, I will take Kunlun Sect disciples to Imperial Thunder Sect. Yes, it should be so. Fuyuzi took the jade slip and nodded. I just heard from Sha Kongzi that Immortal Xiao is very sentimental. Starfall Sky attacked Imperial Thunder Sect, how can Immortal Xiao let it go? Since my Kunlun Sect has chosen to fight Starfall Sky, we will start with Imperial Thunder Sect. After saying that, Fuyuzi cupped his hands and hurriedly walked out of the hall. Xian Jing transmitted his voice to Fuyuzi. Sha Kongzi and the others were confused and didn't know what the two were talking about. But looking at the two's happy faces, they knew it wasn't a bad thing. When Fuyuzi was about to leave, Immortal Xing Hui hurriedly said, Sect Master, quickly tell us, how did Immortal Xiao become Senior Dujie? Yes. Sha Kongzi was even more puzzled and said, when disciples saw Xiaohua at the Feather Immortal Assembly, he was just a qi refining cultivator. Before Xian Jing could speak, Fuyuzi's surprised voice came from outside the hall, Ho Qing, why are you here again? Ho Qing's voice sounded, reporting to Senior, disciple received the blood shuttle message from Immortal Yu Huan, which also has Sect Master's Spirit Mirror, Immortal Yu Huan. Fuyuzi was even more puzzled, isn't he a disciple of Immortal Xian Qing? Hearing this, Xian Jing shouted, quickly bring the blood shuttle message in. Fuyuzi, quickly do your own thing, don't delay. Yes, Sect Master. Fuyuzi's heart trembled, and he hurriedly flew out of the hall. Immediately after, Ho Qing came in again and respectfully handed over the blood shuttle message, saying, Disciple just flew out of the mountain gate and was about to enlighten the Azure Ape. Hearing Ho Qing mention the azure ape again, Xian Jing didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He waved his hand and said, "There's no need to mention the azure ape again, you can make the decision yourself. Thank you, Sect Master." Ho Qing hurriedly bowed and explained the process of him receiving the blood shuttle message. Seeing that Ho Qing didn't see any other disciples along the way, Xian Jing was relieved. He took the blood shuttle and inserted the incantation. Looking at the multicolored rays of light, he instructed, "Ho Qing, you received 2 blood shuttle messages today, your contribution isn't small. This seat will definitely reward you handsomely. Quickly go and collect the azure ape, then return to the clear sound hall and wait." "Yes, disciple understands." Ho Qing was overjoyed. He didn't know that Xian Jing was afraid that he would leak the news and wanted him to return, so he hurriedly accepted the order and left. After Ho Qing left, everyone in the hall couldn't remain calm. They stared at the jade slip in Xian Jing's hand, waiting for him to analyze it. Xian Jing took a deep breath and extended his divine sense. After looking for a moment, a smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. "Lord Sect Master." Sha Kongzi couldn't help but wail, "What news did Daoist Yu Huan send? If you want to find someone to send a message, you might as well tell disciple." "Ha!" Xian Jing laughed loudly, "Daoist Yu Huan doesn't need to send a message back, because soon, all the cultivators in the entire Dawn Rain continent will know." "Oh. What news?" Daoist Xinghui asked curiously. Could it be Daoist Xian Qing's alliance head command token? "Ha ha ha." Xian Jing was still laughing. He looked at everyone and said, "Tonight, we discussed and worried for half the night, but it was all in vain." "Lord Sect Master, what do you mean?" A nascent soul cultivator asked curiously, "Could it be that Daoist Xian Qing sent an order for us to—" Suddenly, Sha Kongzi exclaimed, "I understand. It's Daoist Xiao Hua." "That's right." Xian Jing nodded and said, "Daoist Yu Huan was the senior that Daoist Xian Qing sent to tail Lei Yunzi. He wasn't as fast as senior Lei Yunzi's lightning escape technique, so by the time he arrived at the Imperial Thunder Sect, everything had already been settled. The 2 spirit-severing stage seniors of the Imperial Thunder Sect, Lei Yunzi and Lei Yunzi, died at the end of their lifespans. The Immortal Alliance's deputy leader, Luo Xingtian, and his spirit-severing stage subordinate were killed by Daoist Xiao with a single palm strike. Elder Sun Yunzi of the Splendid Flower Sect was forced to commit suicide by Daoist Xiao. The disciples of the Splendid Flower Sect, Xuanyan School, 7 Skills Sect, and Cleansing Flower Sect were defeated by Daoist Zhao's Fortune Gate disciples. Finally, there were rumors from the Imperial Thunder Sect that the 2 spirit-severing stage seniors, Feng Shu of the Immortal Ascension School and Chan Si Miao of the Immortal Music Sect, were captured by Daoist Zhao's spirit pets and brought to the Myriad Lightning Valley of the Imperial Thunder Sect because they searched Daoist Zhao's soul. One was killed by Daoist Xiao personally, and the other committed suicide out of regret. Daoist Xiao allowed him to enter the cycle of reincarnation. Oh my God! Everyone was dumbfounded. Sha Kongzi couldn't help but moan, those were 4 spirit-severing stage seniors, and 1 void refinement stage senior, ah. How did they turn into ashes in front of Daoist Xiao? P.S. Fellow Daoists who like this book, please subscribe to it at Qidian, vote for it, give it a recommendation vote, collect it, and give it a tip. Chapter 5166. He deserved to die, he deserved it. Daoist Xinghui said, Luo Xingtian and Sun Yunzi plotted against the Imperial Thunder Sect, they deserved retribution. 2 Divine Transformation Realm seniors from the Immortal Ascension Gate and Immortal Music Sect actually attacked a Qi Refinement Realm cultivator, that's a little shameless. Sha Kongzi echoed. When Daoist Yu Huan rushed to the Imperial Thunder Sect, Daoist Xiao was no longer in the Lei Mo Mountains. According to Fairy Xianhua, he had already led the Fortune Gate's disciples to the Sky Patrol City. Xianjing continued, therefore, when Daoist Yu Huan returned to the Kunlun Mountains, he sent a blood shuttle message, waiting for me to make a decision. Sect Master. A nascent soul cultivator suddenly asked, weren't the Fortune Gate's disciples besieging the sword cultivators in the Sky Patrol City? Why did they return to the country of Shi? Moreover, how could the Fortune Gate's disciples fight against the country of Shi's 4 sects? This Fortune Gate's disciple is not the Fortune Gate's disciple. Xianjing smiled faintly and said, these are the Fortune Gate's disciples led by Daoist Shao. It is said that most of them are Golden Core Realm cultivators, and there are hundreds of thousands of them. How could the Fortune Gate's disciples in the Meng country compare to them? Oh my! All the Kunlun sect's disciples were speechless. Hundreds of thousands of Golden Core Realm cultivators, this is the strength to sweep through the 3 countries. Yes. Xianjing smiled and said, with this strength, the Fortune Gate is already the strongest force on the Dawn Rain continent, and Daoist Shao, who has the strength to pass the tribulation, is the strongest person on the Dawn Rain continent. Thinking about the message Gu Yunzi sent earlier, in the entire Dawn Rain continent, other than the Imperial Thunder sect, our Kunlun sect is the luckiest. Therefore, everyone, how can we let such a great opportunity slip away in vain? Disciples, listen to my command. Yes. All the cultivators were overjoyed, and they bowed and answered. Sha Kongzi, Huizhenzi, quickly pass down this sect master's order and gather the Kunlun sect's disciples. This sect master will personally lead them. Xianjing stood up and said excitedly, we will head to the Sky Patrol City to support the Fortune Gate and Daoist Shao. Yes, disciple understands. Sha Kongzi and the other 5 nascent soul realm cultivators received the order and hurriedly left. Sect Master. Reverend Xinghui hurriedly called out, disciple wants to go as well. Hee hee. Xianjing smiled and looked at the other disciples in the hall, you have more important things to do. Stay in Kunlun Mountain and wait for Fuyuezi's arrangement. Ah. There's something even more important? Daoist Master Xinghui asked curiously, is it the thing that the sect master used to send a voice transmission to Fuyuezi? Xianjing stretched his body, which was a rare sight. He looked at the dawn outside the main hall and said with a smile, that's right. That matter is really too important to our Kunlun sect. Not only can I not put all my eggs in one basket, but I also have to draw the attention of all the cultivators to Sky Patrol City. Although Perfected Star Hui and the others were puzzled, they did not dare to ask further. They only watched as Xianjing issued the sect master orders. By the time the sun was high up in the sky, groups of Kunlun sect disciples were already fully equipped. Some of them were riding on flying boats, some were riding on flying beasts, and some were even activating their bodies to fly out of Mount Kunlun in groups. Xianjing did not hide his deployment of troops, and even had a hint of fanfare. Therefore, before the Kunlun sect disciples were 100 miles away from Mount Kunlun, the news had already been sent to various places in Lian country, Meng country, and even Shi country. Not to mention that Xianjing of Kunlun sect had received the message from Gu Yunzi and Daoist Yuhuan, he made a prompt decision to personally lead the Kunlun sect disciples to Sky Patrol City. In Sky Patrol City, which was far to the north of the 3 countries of cultivation, in another hall, Yun Guichong was looking at Yi Shixiang in disbelief and exclaimed in a low voice, Young Master Yi, what do you mean? Are you really going to be engaged to Hongsha Fairy? Are you joking with me? Yi Shixiang looked at Yun Guichong lightly and said, do you think I'm joking with you? Is there a need for me to joke with you? No. Yun Guichong hurriedly waved his hand and said, Young master, don't worry. I just found it unbelievable when I first heard the news. Because this is completely different from what we discussed before. I'm not sure what you discussed with my Yi family's patriarch. Yi Shixiang glanced at Yun Jichong. He didn't care about Yun Jichong's feelings and said, I'm also not sure why you invited Fairy Hongxia to Sky Patrol City. But since you want me to be engaged to Fairy Hongxia, then I'll really be engaged to her. Whatever you want Hongxia Fairy to do, I'll take care of it. Seeing that Yi Shixiang wanted to turn the pretense into reality, Yun Guichong felt as if he had smashed his own foot with a rock. He sucked in a breath as if his foot was in pain, and said, let's not talk about what Hongxia Fairy wants to do for now. I only want to ask young master, do you really want to be engaged to Hongxia Fairy, or are you pretending to be engaged to her? If it's fake, young master doesn't need to. I've discussed it with your patriarch. Among the Fortune Gates forces, 40% belongs to the Yi family. Of course it's real. Yi Shixiang didn't wait for Yun Guichong to finish and interrupted him, saying impatiently, if it's fake, do I need to tell you? This. Yun Guichong was tongue-tied and didn't know how to continue. After a while, he persuaded in a low voice, young Master Yi, I'm sure you know that Hongxia Fairy is Xiao Hua's Dao companion. In the 1,000 years that Xiao Hua has been missing, who knows how many Daoist cultivators have proposed marriage to the Huanhua sect, but Hongxia Fairy didn't agree to any of them. I even heard that a junior of Fairy Baihua's forced her to the door, and even Fairy Baihua nodded. However, Hongxia Fairy would rather commit suicide than agree. In the end, Fairy Baihua's junior had no choice but to give up. Hongxia Fairy clearly still has feelings for Xiao Hua and didn't even give face to Fairy Baihua. Can she agree to you? How can you compare me to those vulgar people? Yi Shixiang snorted disdainfully at Yun Guichong's words. They only forced her and didn't understand Hongxia Fairy's hardships and bitterness. How can they obtain her heart? They only fancied Hongxia Fairy's beauty and didn't pay attention to Hongxia Fairy's inner beauty and ability. How can they be worthy of Hongxia Fairy? Yun Guichong didn't think that Yi Shixiang's words were too much, but he still shook his head in disbelief. It's not that I'm looking down on young master, but I understand Hongxia Fairy's single-mindedness. She definitely won't agree to you. Humph. Yi Shixiang snorted coldly. Since she's already at Sky Patrol City, it's no longer up to her to agree or not. I'm only giving her a chance to be happy now. If she doesn't want this chance, then I can only take it back. Yun Guichong saw that he couldn't convince Yi Shixiang, so he could only reply, young Master Yi, this matter is of great importance and has already deviated from our agreement with the Yi clan. It won't be too late for me to report this matter to that person first. However, before we get a clear answer, our plan will still proceed. Then you'll have to hurry. Yi Shixiang nodded. It's only 10 days before we start. I hope to have an answer before we start. This will be beneficial to both you and me. Sigh, of course. Yun Guichong sighed, I understand. Then, Yun Guichong didn't dare to delay and hurriedly left after saluting. Yi Shixiang looked at Yun Guichong's back with a meaningful smile on his face. What? Young Master Yi, he's really going to be engaged to Hongxia Fairy. Are you sure he's not joking with you? In a hidden location, a similarly astonished exclamation came from a handsome cultivator's mouth. Wasn't this cultivator Yutong, the one who had fought a battle of wits and courage with Xiao Hua back then? However, Yutong was already at the mid-yuanying stage and time didn't leave any traces on his face. Yun Jichong smiled bitterly and said helplessly, Senior brother you're not the only one who was shocked. Even I was so shocked that I was speechless. This was something that had already been discussed. How could he change it just like that? Are you sure he's serious? Yutong rolled his eyes and pinched his chin as he said, Did you discover our arrangement and prepare to bargain? How is that possible? Yun Guichong shook his head vigorously and said, "He's only the young master of the Yi clan. He doesn't know about the matter we discussed with the Yi clan master. I saw that this young master was sloppy and didn't seem to care about the clan's affairs. How could he know about our arrangement? Moreover, our plan was very secretive. Even the sword cultivator guarding the Sky Patrol City and the Yi clan master didn't know about it. How could he know?" Seeing Yu Tong smiling without saying anything, Yun Jichong added, "Fairy Hong Xia is a famous beauty in the Dawn Rain continent. Now, she's even a nascent soul grandmaster. There are many male cultivators who have admired her for a long time. I reckon Yi Shixiang's heart was moved when he saw Fairy Hong Xia and wanted to dual cultivate with her. Senior Martial Brother, you must make a decision quickly and inform the Yi clan master as soon as possible. Don't ruin our plan because of this child's selfish desire." "Humph." Yu Tong stopped smiling and snorted, "Don't worry, Junior Martial Brother Yun. We've planned this for nearly 1,000 years. How could it be ruined because of this? Don't worry, I'll arrange." "No, I'll go and see the Yi clan master personally. You'd better pay attention to the big formation we've set up. Don't let anything go wrong at the last moment. You're the only person I trust. Don't let me down." Yun Guichong's expression turned serious. He bowed and said, "I've received Senior Martial Brother Yun's kindness and was able to conceive a baby smoothly. Senior Martial Brother even swore a blood oath to let me benefit from the Four Spirits' blood curse. What I've done is far less than what Senior Martial Brother has done. I'm working for Senior Martial Brother and also for my own future. How can I not do my best? P.S. Fellow cultivators who like this book, please subscribe to it at Chidian. Vote for it, vote for it, vote for it, donate it, and thank you for all forms of support." Chapter 5167. Ha! Yu Tong laughed and patted Yun Guichong's shoulder. "Among all the cultivators in the world, who else can I trust if not you? Do you still remember what I said that day?" "Of course." Yun Guichong was rather respectful and also rather proud as he said, "Senior Martial Brother once said that on the Dawn Rain continent, with our two clans working together, is there anything we can't do? Now, it seems that it's true. I'm always glad that I can work together with Senior Brother. Since that's the case, there's no need to say more." Yu Tong's smile remained unchanged. He nodded and said, "However, the little girl from Tianmen Mountain's Huang family is more troublesome. You have to remind Yi Shixiang not to be careless. Don't let her see any flaws." "Yes, I know." Yun Guichong hurriedly replied, "This gold core female cultivator named Huang Mingxiang is very alert. It said that she doubted Yi Shixiang's conditions several times. Yi Shixiang didn't know whether to agree or not, so he racked his brains. However, her strength is only at the late stage of gold core, and she's not pregnant yet. Senior Brother, you don't have to worry too much. She's already in Sentry City. In the worst-case scenario, you can directly attack her." Yu Tong thought for a while and replied, "Her magic power is sealed, and her bloodline will also be affected. It's best to let Huang Mingxiang take the initiative to enter the trap. Of course, if it doesn't work, we can only do this in the end. But the disciple of the Silver Tiger bloodline." Yun Guichong hesitated slightly and asked in a low voice, "Senior Brother Yu, the matter is imminent. Haven't you decided yet?" Sigh. Yu Tong sighed. He looked at a corner of the space and did not speak for a long time. It was as if he did not hear Yun Jichong's question. After half a meal, he finally spoke, "I don't feel the slightest burden when I attack others. But when I think about attacking my own son, I feel very troubled. Sometimes, I wish I could grow another brain so that I can come up with a better method." "Yes. Yun Guichong stole a glance at Yutong. His eyes turned slightly, and a complicated expression appeared on his face as he replied, "Senior brother you're right. I also hesitated for a long time before I chose Yun Xiaoying. In order to make it up to her. I'm very obedient to her. As long as my Yun family can satisfy her request, I'll agree. Aren't I the same?" Yutong retracted his gaze and said faintly, "However, we can only give them external objects. What they have to pay is their lives. I can't get rid of my guilt." Yun Jichong thought for a moment and said, "I understand Shixiang's benevolence." However, the situation in the Dawn Rain continent had changed drastically. The sword cultivators had descended from the north, the heavenly demon sect had swept across the four directions, and the various cultivation aristocratic families had awakened their bloodlines. The cultivation sects were old but not rigid. If the Yun family and the Yu family did not rise, they would be destroyed by others in the future. We can only sacrifice ourselves for the greater good. Even if they know about this cruelty, I'm sure they can understand our painstaking efforts. The worry on Yutong's face disappeared. He nodded and said, "In that case, let's choose the Jade Seal song. In a while, I will issue a patriarch's order to make him listen to your arrangements." Yun Guichong's face lit up. He bowed and said, "Yes, I understand. I'll leave the matter of the four spirits' blood curse to junior brother Yun." Yutong said, "I'll go find the Yi family patriarch now." Yun Guichong stood up and said respectfully, "I'll remember. I'll go and make the arrangements now." After Yun Guichong left, Yutong's lips curled into a smile. However, he frowned slightly and muttered to himself, "Damn it. This old fart. What is he planning now?" Previously, he pretended to be mysterious and acted and directed himself to be the young master. After all, this young master is destined to be a disgrace. If the Yi family really had a young master, it would be impossible for him to bear this evil reputation. But now, why does he suddenly want to dual cultivate with Fairy Hongxia? Why does he have to turn a lie into a reality? Could it be that the Kai family has some secret that I don't know? Or could it be that Fairy Hongxia has a secret that I can't see through? After thinking for a moment, Yutong stood up and said coldly in his heart, "No matter what, Fairy Hongxia is the key to the four spirits' blood formation. I can't let that old fart ruin my plan." It was already night time. In Sky Patrol City, the wind and snow were getting heavier. The sword formation guarding Sky Patrol City did not stop the wind and snow, allowing the snowstorm to envelop Sky Patrol City. The streets of Sky Patrol City were still straight and cold. Although the swordsmen were not afraid of the cold, there were only a few people on the long streets. The pale light of the snow reflected the moonlight that occasionally peeked out from the clouds. The weak light shone on a thin, cloaked cultivator. This cultivator did not fly in the air. Instead, he walked steadily on the snow, leaving behind footprints with each step, just like Xiao Hua in the past. The cultivator turned a corner and came face to face with a pavilion. The style of the pavilion was simple and unadorned. There was a faint brilliance on it, which seemed to be protected by a restriction. Under this brilliance, the wind and snow could not get close to the pavilion. Even the front of the pavilion was dry, with no snow at all. Sigh. The cultivator walked to the end of the snow and sighed. He lifted his cloak and looked at his face. Wasn't that Yutong? Yutong looked at the ground not far away and whispered, "Humans always want to be comfortable and enjoy. After learning some Dharma spells, they want to go against heaven and earth. Although the wind and snow are cold, it is the chi of heaven and earth. If you can walk in it, you can communicate with heaven and earth, stimulate vitality, and maintain the vitality of the body. This kind of physical tempering can only be felt by living cultivators in the mortal world. Now that the chi of heaven and earth has been isolated by Dharma spells, how can the will of heaven and earth be felt? No wonder there are no Mahayana cultivators on the Dawn Rain continent, let alone tribulation cultivators who are qualified to cross the tribulation and enter the immortal world. Although the Yi clan patriarch, although he is a descendant of the immortal world's lost clan, he doesn't even understand this principle. It seems that it will be difficult for him to achieve great things. However, after whispering, Yutong stepped on the dry ground and shook his head with a wry smile. Ha, forget it. Don't talk about others. If I didn't have the experience of almost having my soul destroyed, how would I know this? Do I know how to cherish these things? Which senior has come to visit my Enlightenment Mountain Manor? Yutong had only taken a few steps when a voice came from the pavilion. Several sword cultivators in sword attire flew out and blocked in front of Yutong. Yutong looked at these swordsmen indifferently and said, I'm the master of the Yu family. I'm old friends with Elder Yi. Quickly report this. The sword cultivators looked at each other. The first sword cultivator said seriously, Senior, please know that our master is not in Sky Patrol City. Yutong smiled and took out a token from his chest. He raised his hand and tossed it to the sword cultivator. The sword cultivator took the token and looked at it. He hurriedly returned it respectfully and said with a smile, Senior, please wait for a moment. I'll quickly report this to my master. Before the sword cultivator could finish, a dignified and old voice came from the pavilion. Fellow Daoist Yu, please come to the Breeze Sword Room. I'll be waiting there. Hearing this dignified voice, the sword cultivators hurriedly stood up and answered respectfully, Yes. Master. Senior, this way please. The sword cultivator in front then brought Yutong into the pavilion while the other sword cultivators disappeared into the darkness. When Yutong stepped into a quiet room that was overflowing with sword light, an old man with white hair and beard was standing in the middle of the quiet room. This old man's gaze was like a sword. Thousands of sword lights appeared around him. The sword lights either disappeared into the void or connected with the sword light in the quiet room. If this old man did not intentionally reveal himself, Yutong would not be able to notice his existence even if he stood in the quiet room. Yutong stood under the sword light and looked at the old man who looked 70% similar to Yi Shixiang. He smiled bitterly in his heart. He knew very well that tonight was just a formality. He had to come, but at the same time, he would not be able to get the answer he wanted. Without waiting for him to speak, the old man frowned and asked, Fellow Daoist Yu, didn't Immortal Emissary one tell you? Although I'm in Sky Patrol City, if you don't have any urgent matters, you must not come to me. You can look for Shixiang for everything. Otherwise, if you attract the attention of Sky Patrol Sword Sect, Soaring Feather Sect, and Quilted Mountain Sect, I'm afraid it'll be detrimental to my Yi clan's plan. Yutong withdrew his gaze and bowed respectfully, Senior Yi, I really didn't want to see you, but there's been a change in the situation. I have no choice but to meet you personally. Oh. When the old man heard this, he was surprised and asked curiously, There's only a dozen days left from the time of our discussion. How could there be a change in the situation? Senior, you really don't know. Yutong thought for a moment and asked, Didn't young Master Yi report it? In order to train Shixiang, I didn't tell him that I was in Sky Patrol City. He thought I was still in Enlightenment Mountain Manor in Huan Country. The old man shook his head and said, It would take more than 10 days to send a message from Sky Patrol City to Enlightenment Mountain Manor. Therefore, he thought he wouldn't be able to send a message in time and didn't report it, right? Yutong held his chin and hesitated without speaking. The old man asked curiously, Yutong, did Shixiang do something wrong to affect my cooperation with Immortal Emissary Wen? Not at the moment. Yutong sneered in his heart, but he still went with the flow and said, however, if we let him do whatever he wants, I'm afraid it'll affect it. Oh. Why do you say that? The old man asked hurriedly, did Xixiang do something wrong? If so, Yu Tong, you have to be more tolerant and don't disturb Immortal Emissary Wen. Yes, I haven't reported this to Lord Immortal Emissary yet. Yu Tong nodded and said, after all, it's just a small wish of the young master. He probably wants to use me to explain it to you, right? The old man looked confused and urged, Yu Tong, if you have something to say, just say it. What did Xixiang do? The young master wants to be engaged to Fairy Hong Xia. Yu Tong said with a smile. The old man did not look like he was thinking and blurted out, he wanted to be engaged to Fairy Hong Xia in the first place. P.S. Fellow cultivators who like this book, please subscribe to it at Chidian. Vote for it, vote for it, vote for it, give it a tip, and... Chapter 5168. The old man paused for a second as if he had understood something. A strange expression appeared on his face as he scolded jokingly, this little brat, this old man understands now. He has taken a fancy to Fairy Hong Xia and wants to become sword companions with her. The problem is... Yu Tong smiled bitterly. According to our previous discussion, the engagement between the young lord and Fairy Hong Xia is fake news to lure the Fortune Gate's disciples here. It doesn't matter. The old man shrugged and smiled. The Fortune Gate's disciples have already gathered near the Sky Patrol City and Fairy Hong Xia has already lost her usefulness. Her engagement with Xixiang won't affect this matter at all. Moreover, wouldn't it anger the Fortune Gate's disciples even more? Yu Tong said indifferently, if fake news can be used as bait, why would we need to go through so much trouble to invite Fairy Hong Xia over? The old man smiled, yes, didn't this old man say it the other day? Why would I invite Fairy Hong Xia over? However, Immortal Emissary Wen didn't agree and demanded that it be true so as not to arouse suspicion. Now that Xixiang has made this request, although it seems to be different from what we discussed earlier, it is in line with Immortal Emissary Wen's request. Yu Tong said unhappily, Senior, at this point, you shouldn't feign ignorance. If Fairy Hong Xia is not useful to Lord Immortal Envoy Wen, why would Lord Immortal Envoy Wen invite Fairy Hong Xia to the Sky Patrol City? Yu Tong. The old man laughed loudly, you're wrong. This old man has never met Immortal Envoy Wen, everything was passed on by you. Until now, this old man has no idea what use Fairy Hong Xia has for Immortal Envoy Wen. Hearing the old man's words, Yu Tong's displeasure disappeared and he smiled, so Senior doesn't know. Then this junior has wrongly accused Senior. This junior thought that Lord Immortal Envoy Wen had already explained it to Senior. No. The old man shook his head, Immortal Envoy Wen did not explain his intentions to this old man. He also warned this old man not to interfere in his matters, yes. Yu Tong hurriedly said, if the young lord is engaged to Fairy Hong Xia, wouldn't it disrupt Lord Immortal Envoy Wen's plans? What plans does Immortal Emissary Wen have? The old man asked with interest. Yu Tong shook his head and said, I'm sorry. I don't know the specific purpose. Moreover, I don't have the permission of the Immortal Emissary, so I don't dare to talk about it. Seeing that the jade record was watertight, the old man rolled his eyes and smiled. If that's the case, how do you know that Xixiang's engagement with Hongxia Fairy will definitely affect Immortal Envoy Wen's arrangement? Yu Tong sneered in his heart and replied, Senior, don't try to test the Lord Immortal Emissary. The Lord Immortal Emissary is very satisfied with this cooperation with the Yi clan. If this small matter angers the Lord Immortal Emissary, all our previous efforts will be for naught. The old man rubbed his chin and pondered for a moment before replying, to be honest, this old man is also in a bit of a dilemma. This old man sincerely wishes to cooperate with Immortal Emissary Wen. At the same time, since Shi Xiang has made this request, it seems that he really likes Fairy Hong Xia. This old man does not want to ruin a good marriage. How about this, Yu Tong? This old man will send a disciple to ask Shi Xiang and find out his true feelings. You also report this matter to Immortal Emissary 1 and see if there's a possibility. Yu Tong thought for a moment and nodded. This junior understands. This junior will report this matter now. Once there's news, this junior will immediately come to see senior. Thank you for your trouble. The old man smiled. Please put in a good word for this matter in front of Immortal Emissary 1. This junior understands. Yu Tong bowed and left in a hurry. Not to mention that Yu Tong and the Yi family head were probing each other. In the Lian country, there was a mountain peak called Luqing Peak. It was an extremely ordinary mountain peak of the Utopia faction. Under the hot afternoon sun, a white-haired old man with a ruddy complexion stood on the mountain peak with his hands behind his back. He was frowning slightly as he looked at the sea of clouds in front of him. The sea of clouds was vast and boundless, and the mountain wind whistled, stirring up thousands of layers of clouds. The clouds were tangled, just like the worry in the old man's eyes. Whoosh! Suddenly, a rainbow rushed out from the mountain range in the distance and flew towards the mountain peak. Before it could get close, the rainbow stopped in midair. A tall nascent soul cultivator stood in midair and bowed. Disciple Heng Zhao has something important to report to the sect leader. The old man raised his head and revealed a hale and hearty appearance. Wasn't this the sect leader of the Utopia faction, He Ping? He Ping looked at Heng Zhao and said in a low voice, "Come here." Yes. Heng Zhao nodded and moved again. He landed beside Immortal He Ping and hurriedly took out a jade slip from his arms. He handed it to Immortal He Ping and said in a low voice, "Sect leader, this is the news sent back by the scouting disciples of the Utopia faction near the Kunlun Mountains." The Kunlun faction. He Ping raised his hand and took the jade slip. He did not look at it but looked at Heng Zhao. Xian Jing has made a move. Heng Zhao was stunned and looked at He Ping with admiration in his eyes. He hurriedly said respectfully, "Sect leader, you're really a prophet. The Kunlun faction has indeed made a move." Alas! He Ping sighed and turned to look at the sea of clouds. The three kingdoms of cultivation are not peaceful. Now, with the intervention of the immortal allies, it's getting more and more chaotic. The Utopia faction can't stay out of this. Oh. Heng Ju was startled. He seemed to have understood something. With a look of realization, he said thoughtfully, "This disciple understands. It's the work of the immortal allies. I knew it. The Fortune Gate is just a bunch of chickens and pottery dogs. How dare they besiege the Sky Patrol City? If it's the immortal allies, then it's understandable." "What did you say?" It was He Ping's turn to be puzzled. He looked at Heng Zhao strangely and asked, "The Fortune Gate's disciples besieging the Sky Patrol City was ordered by the immortal allies? Who told you that? Didn't the sect leader just say that?" Heng Zhao was stunned and asked curiously, "Did I say that?" He Ping whispered and looked at the jade slip in his hand. He did not know whether to laugh or cry. He waved the jade slip and said with a smile, "I've been racking my brains over the immortal allies. It seems that there's been a misunderstanding." He Ping checked the jade slip with his divine sense. He frowned and asked in confusion, "Why did Xian Jing lead the Kunlun faction's disciples to the Sky Patrol City?" The scouting disciples said that the Kunlun faction was going to support the Fortune Gate. Heng Zhao hurriedly replied. "What a joke." He Ping sneered. "Xian Jing is going to support the Fortune Gate. He and the sword cultivators are going to attack the Fortune Gate. If the Kunlun faction is going to attack the Fortune Gate, How could Xian Jing make such a big fuss? Heng Zhao shook his head and said, if it were me, I would have gone there quietly. No, no. He Ping shook his head and said, there must be something fishy. What about the immortal allies that the sect leader mentioned just now? Heng Zhao asked tentatively. He Ping told Heng Zhao about the message from the starfall sky. It was exactly the same as the jade slip that Xian Jing got from the Kunlun faction. Heng Zhao smiled and said, what's there to worry about? The Rocky Border sect has been declining for the past 400 years. Even if the Utopia faction doesn't do anything, the Kunlun faction will. No, no. He Ping shook his head again and said, the Utopia faction, the Kunlun faction, and the Black Sky sect can do anything, but the immortal allies can't. Moreover, I don't know what the arbitration order is. How can I act rashly? Could it be that the Kunlun faction has also received a message from the immortal allies? Heng Zhao hesitated and said, but what they got is different from what the Utopia faction got. Don't think too much about it. He Ping thought for a while and said, Deputy Leader Luo's message was only for me. He didn't mention the Black Sky sect. It seems that he wants to take advantage of the situation.
Well, since the Fortune Gate wants to make trouble in the Sky Patrol City, and even the Kunlun faction heard about it, the Utopia faction will also join in the fun. Sect leader, you don't care about the message from the immortal allies? Heng Zhao was surprised and said, isn't that inappropriate? The immortal allies are just the immortal allies. They don't belong to the three kingdoms of cultivation. He Ping smiled and said, I understand. Sometimes it's good to turn a blind eye, but sometimes it's important to make a choice. Yes, I understand. Heng Zhao nodded and said, I'll send the message now. Let the disciples get ready. Oh, by the way. He Ping suddenly thought of something and asked, how's your disciple? Is he still in the golden core stage? Heng Zhao's disciple was naturally Li Zongbao. When he heard He Ping's question, a hint of sadness appeared on Heng Zhao's face and he said in a low voice, I'm not strict enough as a teacher. I didn't teach him well and brought shame to the Black Sky sect. I've seen Zongbao's talent. It's definitely rare in the world. He Ping was puzzled and said, moreover, he cultivated the parting love treasure mirror. How could he? Heng Zhao hesitated for a moment and said, of course, this bastard's talent is extraordinary. But he provoked emotions. Not only did he force the Imperial Thunder Sect's mountain gate with the immortal piercing whip, but he also carried a crystal coffin with him and wanted to resurrect a dead woman from a cultivation sect. It's impossible for him to cultivate the parting love treasure mirror. Sigh, what a pity. He Ping sighed. Zongbao is a man with deep feelings. I didn't dare to report this to the sect leader. Heng Zhao said again, anyway. I've given up on him. You don't have to be so heartless. He Ping tried to persuade him. Since Zongbao can't break through the bottleneck, I guess he doesn't have much time left. It's fate that you two are master and disciple. Heng Yu seemed to have been seen through. He looked up at Yun Hai and said, I'm afraid I won't be able to see him again. He Ping nodded. When the matter in Sky Patrol City is settled, you can go out and look for him. After all, he's a disciple of the Utopia faction. Don't die in a foreign land. P.S. Fellow cultivators who like this book, please subscribe to it at Chidian. Vote for it, vote for it, vote for it, give it a tip, and...
Chapter 5169. Yes, I understand. Heng Zhao sniffed and his figure flashed. Without bidding farewell to Reverend He Ping, he had already rushed into the air. This child. Reverend He Ping smiled kindly and did not blame him. However, before Heng Zhao landed in the mountains, another message flew out and landed in front of him. Heng Zhao took the jade slip and read it with his divine sense. His expression changed and he flew back without hesitation. Reverend He Ping smiled and said, "What's wrong? Could it be that something urgent has happened?" "Yes." Heng Zhao hurriedly handed the jade slip to Reverend He Ping and said, "The border disciples of the Lian country sent a message saying that an unknown nascent soul cultivator led hundreds of thousands of gold core and foundation establishment disciples to Sky Patrol City. They claim to be the disciples of the Fortune Gate." "What? Hundreds of thousands of gold core disciples? The Fortune Gate?" Reverend He Ping was stunned and said, "How is this possible? Did the messenger make a mistake?" "No." Heng Zhao explained, "The jade slip said that not only did this disciple see it, but the other disciples of the Meng country and the Shi country also saw it. They followed them for 2 hours." Reverend He Ping listened and read the jade slip with his divine sense. After a while, he withdrew his divine sense and said in a low voice, "These Fortune Gate disciples formed a team and there were scouting disciples nearby. They looked like they had been on the battlefield for a long time. Moreover, the scouting disciples did not make things difficult for the scouting disciples of the Utopia faction. They even told us where the Fortune Gate disciples went. Is this a trick of the Immortal Alliance?" Sect leader. While Reverend He Ping was thinking, a late-stage gold core old man flew over crazily and shouted, "Something big happened, something big happened." Reverend He Ping was displeased. When the old man flew over, he scolded, "Fang Jin, as a gold core cultivator, you should have, sect leader." Before Reverend He Ping could finish, the gold core cultivator named Fang Jin handed over the jade slip and said, "Take a look at it first." Reverend He Ping glared at Fang Jin and took the jade slip. He read it with his divine sense and as expected, Reverend He Ping's expression changed drastically. He exclaimed, How is this possible? Immortal Alliance's Deputy Alliance leader Luo was killed by Xiao Hua with one palm." After saying that, Immortal He Ping seemed to have understood something. He immediately ordered, "Heng Zhao, quickly pass on my order. Our Utopia faction's combat-ready disciples are to form a team immediately. After 6 hours, we will set off for Sky Patrol City." Heng Zhao wailed, "Lord Sect Master, this. What in the world is going on? Who killed Vice Alliance leader Luo? Where was he killed? What does this have to do with Sky Patrol City? We don't have much time. Let's talk as we walk." At this time, Immortal He Ping stopped talking about Fang Jin. He flew up first and said, "I was wondering why Xian Jing suddenly sent troops to Sentry City. It turns out that he went to flatter Immortal Xiao. It would be a waste if I don't flatter him. My Utopia faction will also flatter him." "Xiao Hua, Master Xiao." Heng Ming flew up and asked curiously, "You mean Wu Ming, the nascent soul cultivator who was on very good terms with Zhong Bao but has been missing for nearly 1,000 years? What a pity." Immortal He Ping sighed again, "Zhong Bao is not in the Utopia faction. Otherwise, my Utopia faction would be one step ahead of the Kunlun sect." Heng Zhao was really at a loss. As he flew, he asked Fang Jin for more details. Since the Utopia faction and the Kunlun sect of the Lian Kingdom had heard the news and moved, how could the Xian Tian sect and the Nanming sect be willing to be left behind? Since the Taoist sects of the Lian Kingdom knew, with Li Xiang and Xiong Yi adding fuel to the fire, how could the Tai Ching sect, the Changbai sect, and the Celestial sect of the Meng Kingdom not know? Naturally, they also hurriedly sent out their disciples, led by their respective sect masters, and rushed to Sky Patrol City as if it was a sword battle. The Taoist sects of the Lian Kingdom and the Meng Kingdom had already set off. The Shi Kingdom was close to the water, how could they not know? Not to mention the Shanghua sect, the Qiqiao sect, the Xuanyan sect, and the Huanhua sect, who had ulterior motives. The Xianghua sect's Huayuan mountain was not inferior to the Kunlun mountain of the Kunlun sect. The mountain range was majestic and full of spiritual qi, far surpassing the Thunder sect's Mount Leimo. At this time, on a small mountain peak deep in the mountain range, inside a cave hidden among the rocks, a nascent soul stage cultivator with delicate features was standing respectfully near the stone wall. In front of him was a huge ice crystal. This ice crystal was greenish-purple in color, and a faint chill seeped out like steam. It rose into the air and enveloped the ice crystal. Moreover, two rays of green and purple brilliance formed in the void like two rainbows. Together with the chill, they fell into the center of the ice crystal. Looking at the center of the ice crystal, a skinny old man in the late stage of the void refining realm sat cross-legged with his eyes closed. The greenish-red rainbow fell on his head. The old man's body seemed to be transparent. When the rainbow fell, it illuminated his body. The brilliance was like two pythons flowing in the old man's body. Although the young man was a nascent soul stage cultivator, he would occasionally tremble slightly, as if he was afraid of the chill. Yang Yu. The old man suddenly spoke. As he spoke, the green-red light immediately disappeared, revealing the old man's Taoist robe. The old man's voice was as cold as ice as he said, "You don't have to wait here. Quickly return to Jingyuan Hall. There are many matters to be taken care of in the Xianghua sect. Don't delay them, venerable ancestor." The young man smiled and respectfully said, "The affairs of the Xianghua sect are important, but venerable ancestor's safety is more important. Venerable ancestor may not have the Xianghua sect, but the Xianghua sect can't do without you." Previously, when Sun Yunzi passed the position of sect master to me, he had already made it clear that the Xianghua sect is the land, the solid foundation for us disciples to stand firmly in the country of Xi. Venerable ancestor is the sky, the firmament that can protect us disciples. Sigh. The old man seemed to enjoy it. He actually opened his eyes. Although there was a hint of arrogance at the corner of his mouth, he still sighed. This old man is old. Many times, the will is willing but the strength is insufficient. Of course, Yang Yu, this old man has also told you what I told Sun Yunzi. As long as this old man is alive in this world, no one in the entire Dawn Rain continent will dare to bully our Xianghua sect. Yes, yes. This disciple has never doubted it. The nascent soul cultivator named Yang Yu hurriedly said respectfully. With your strength, how many people in the Dawn Rain continent can be your opponent? It's already good enough that our Xianghua sect doesn't bully others. Hee hee. The old man smiled and didn't say anything else. However, the nascent soul cultivator hesitated for a moment before probing again. However, venerable ancestor, although our Xianghua sect can obtain many benefits from this war against the Imperial Thunder sect, but this disciple saw that Vice Alliance leader Luo's scheme isn't shallow. Who knows, our Xianghua sect might have taken advantage of him today and have to pay him back in the future. Oh. The old man's tone was filled with surprise. His eyes widened as he looked at the young man in surprise. He asked, "Did you think of this yourself, or did Sun Yunzi say it?" This disciple naturally thought of this. The young man hurriedly smiled apologetically. After all, Senior Sun Yunzi is cooperating with Vice Alliance leader Luo. How could he possibly say this? Not bad, not bad. The old man nodded his head in satisfaction. It's really not bad that you can see this point. This shows that Sun Yunzi has good foresight. I wouldn't dare, I wouldn't dare. The young man hurriedly said humbly. As the saying goes, a wise man's 1,000 considerations may make a mistake, but a fool's 1,000 considerations may also make a mistake. This disciple has received many years of guidance from Senior Sun Yunzi. It's not a big deal that I can see a little bit of it occasionally. This isn't a little bit of a problem. The old man shook his head. According to this old man's understanding of Xuanyan sect master Xian, Chiqiao sect master Wu Hongzi, and Huanhua sect master Jing Huan, they might not be able to see this point. They might even want to rely on the Immortal Alliance and that Vice Alliance leader Luo in the future. Sigh, you can't blame them. The young man bitterly smiled. Although the three sects aren't weaker than our Shanghua sect, they don't have a backer like Venerable Ancestor. After this little flattery, the old man's mouth curled up again. He said somewhat proudly, "Your words are not unreasonable. Now, the high-level cultivators on the Dawn Rain continent are only those from the Immortal Alliance. Although Kunlun sect's immortal Xian Qing is the strongest, he has always regarded himself as a supreme and doesn't like to interfere in the affairs of other sections. As long as we don't provoke Kunlun sect, he definitely won't do anything. Let's take the matter of the Imperial Thunder sect as an example. Even if he knew about it, he would only defend the Immortal Alliance and denounce the Hall of Judgment as a non-existent existence. He would absolutely not stop the Starfall sky. Speaking of this, the old man seemed to be tired and stopped. The purple brilliance around his body flickered slightly and surged again. The young man knew that the old man cherished his life. Perhaps it was because talking had shortened his lifespan, so he activated the cold air of the ice crystal. The young man didn't dare to disturb him and just stood there quietly. After a few minutes, the old man opened his mouth again. Other than immortal Xian Qing, it's naturally this old man, an immortal Huanhua of the Tai Qing sect. If the Falling Star Sky wants to build their own forces on the Dawn Rain continent, they definitely can't avoid the two of us. Although the Falling Star Sky looked for this old man on the surface and cooperated with my Shanghua sect, this old man knows that they will definitely look for immortal Huanhua at the same time. This old man doesn't know what immortal Huanhua's choice will be, but this old man knows that we don't have much time left and there aren't many opportunities to do things for the sect. Immortal Huanhua's choice won't be much different from this old man's choice. If that's the case. The young man rolled his eyes and whispered, "Venerable Ancestor and immortal Huanhua." Of course, the young man only said this and didn't continue. The old man's lips curled into a smile again, but he didn't continue. Instead, he paused for a moment and said again, "If it was before the change in the heaven and earth spirit chi, this old man might have done something like the Falling Star Sky. But now, as long as I move, my lifespan will disappear. Who knows where I will fly to one day and fall to the ground with a thud and be smashed to pieces." Ha! The young man covered his mouth and laughed. This disciple understands. This person who fell to his death must be surnamed Luo. He definitely isn't Venerable Ancestor. Vote for it, vote for it, vote for it, give it as a reward, and... Chapter 5170. Ha ha ha. The old man laughed and said proudly, "Yang Yu, you're right. How could I not know Huanhua's temper? He must be like me, hiding in the cave and watching Luo Xing Tian fool around, waiting for Luo Xing Tian's lifespan to pass away. We are not competing in strength, but in hiding. Whoever lives the longest will be the winner. Everything that is happening now is nothing but an illusion." The old man was laughing heartily when suddenly, he frowned and looked out of the immortal's cave. The young man noticed and said with a smile, "It must be Qi Jianghai." "That's right." The old man nodded and said, "I think it's about time. Alas, thinking about the destruction of the Imperial Thunder sect, I feel a little lonely." The old man raised his hand to take out the ice crystal, but just as he raised it, he retracted it and said, "Help me bring in the jade slip." The young man knew that the old man didn't want to use his spiritual power, so he nodded and said, "Yes, disciple obeys." When the young man walked into the cave house again, he was holding a jade slip in his hand. He respectfully handed it over and said, "Ancestor, this is the horn of victory. Disciple doesn't dare to look at it first. You can look at it first. Ah, good. The old man smiled and took the jade slip. He hesitated for a moment and released his spiritual sense into the jade slip. However, in just an instant, the old man's smile froze. An indescribable shock and fear appeared in his eyes. He couldn't help but fly up from the ice crystal and exclaim, "Aw! This. Just as the old man said this 3 times, his body suddenly became transparent. The rainbow that was swimming like a python became disorderly, turning into thousands of tiny fragments of light that madly rushed into the old man's limbs and bones. Ancestor, ancestor. The young man was shocked and quickly formed a seal with both hands. He wanted to do something, but before he could cast the seal, waves of chaotic fluctuations came out of the old man's body. The old man struggled for a bit before he fell onto the ice crystal. His body, which was like rotten wood, quickly decayed and was destroyed by the waves of purple light. How is this possible? Before the old man died, he still muttered in disbelief. His eyes that were about to be destroyed looked at the jade slip in front of him with unwillingness. It was as if the jade slip contained shocking information. This late void refinement realm old man was scared to death by the information in the jade slip. Paw! The jade slip landed on the ice crystal. The old man's body that had turned to ash slowly floated down and covered the jade slip. It was as if he wanted to cover up the information in the jade slip. How is this possible? The young man named Yang Yu was dumbfounded. He really didn't expect that the old man he called Firmament of the Splendid Sect, who was one of the few void refinement realm experts in the Dawn Rain continent, would actually be scared to death by the information in the jade slip. The young man stretched out his hand, wanting to pick up the jade slip, but he was afraid that there was something inside that he could not bear. However, after pondering for a moment, he looked at the ice crystal and then looked at the green-purple brilliance. With a wave of his hand, he took the jade slip into his hand. After taking a deep breath, he slowly probed it with his divine sense. Even though he was already prepared, the information inside still left him dumbfounded on the spot. His expression was unusually ashen. After a long while, he lost his composure and muttered in a low voice, "How is this possible?" Xiao Hua came back and crushed Luo Xingtian and another spirit-severing cultivator to death. Sun Yunzi was forced to commit suicide. Moreover, Xiao Hua brought hundreds of thousands of Fortune Gate disciples who were at least in the Gold Core realm and killed more than half of the disciples of the 4 sects. Qi Jianghai, Daoist Master Withered Leaf, and Fairy Poyu died, and only Fairy Baihua escaped with serious injuries. This isn't a dream, right? However, the young man looked at the empty ice crystal and smiled bitterly, but if it wasn't for this terrifying information, how could the old ancestor, who always cherishes his life, be scared to death for no reason? What should we do? Since Xiao Hua protected the Imperial Thunder Sect, since he killed the disciples of the 4 sects, since he killed Luo Xingtian, how could he let the 4 sects who forced the Imperial Thunder Sect go? Speaking of this, the young man suddenly thought of something. He hurriedly picked up the jade slip and looked at it. His eyes turned rapidly, and he muttered to himself, "It's not that Xiao Hua can't kill Fairy Baihua, and it's not that he can't kill all the disciples of the 4 sects, but he sent the Fortune Gate disciples to the Sky Patrol City. Oh, I understand, it's Zhonghauren's Fortune Gate." At this time, the young man's face was filled with joy, and he almost clapped his hands and said, "Great. I originally thought that this was a joke. Since Daoist Master Xiao went to the Sky Patrol City in anger, how can I not go? Instead of waiting in Jingyuan Hall for Daoist Master Xiao to come to punish me, why don't I take the initiative to apologize? I don't know anything, it's all Qi Jianghai's fault. I am just guilty of not being strict enough." With that, the young man did not dare to waste any time. He took the jade slip and rushed out of the cave, turning into a rainbow. In less than half a day, many disciples of the Profound Flower sect dressed in battle armor flew out of the Profound Flower mountain range and hurriedly flew to the Sky Patrol City. Needless to say, the late spatial refinement realm old man was naturally the Profound Flower sect's Ji Fingzi, who was also the deputy alliance leader of the Immortal Union. The young man was the Profound Flower sect leader, Daoist Master Yang Yu. Since Daoist Master Yang Yu knew how to apologize, how could the Xuanyan School's sect leader, Daoist Master Yi Xian, Qiqiao sect leader, Wu Hongzi, and Daoist Master Jing Huan not know? The country of Xi immediately became lively. Many disciples went out to beg for forgiveness. Looking at the northern part of the state of Xi, the Fortune Gate's disciples formed a torrent, covering the sky. Every place they passed by, there were cultivators who flew away like birds startled by the twang of a bow. This was because they had never seen such an iron army with such momentum and battle intent. Naturally, the Sky Patrol City was unaware of the commotion in the state of Xi. Inside the sword room, the old man looked at Yutong's departing figure and sneered, "Humph, this is beyond this old man's expectations. This fairy Hongxia actually has an innate spirit physique." If this old man wasn't curious about why Immortal Emissary One wanted fairy Hongxia to come here, I would have secretly used my Yi family's secret technique to investigate. Since you all don't want to tell me your purpose, then don't blame this old man for probing. Of course, if what you want is not Fairy Hongxia's innate spirit physique, then this old man will benefit from it. While the old man was talking to himself, Shua, a sword light emerged from the void and flew towards the old man like a meteor. The old man reached out and caught it. It was a flying sword message. After the old man read it, he frowned and asked curiously, why did Qin Jing suddenly send this old man a message to come out of the Sky Patrol City? Doesn't he know that this is a crucial moment, and there can't be any mistakes? If I'm discovered by the Mountain Patrol Sword Sect, won't there be more twists and turns? Speaking of this, the old man laughed, since there are twists and turns in my cooperation with Immortal Emissary One, how can my cooperation with Sword Cultivator be smooth sailing? Forget it, this old man will make a trip. Then, the sword light around the old man quickly converged and the brilliance in the sword room slowly disappeared. After half a cup of tea's time, the old man, who had transformed into an illusory swordsman, flew out of the Sky Patrol City with several attendants and rushed into the night sky in the northwest direction of the city. The northwest direction of the Sky Patrol City was the original location of the Sword Tomb. Since Xiao Hua destroyed the Sword Tomb when he condensed his core in the Sword Tomb 700 years ago, the Sword Tomb no longer existed and there was no natural barrier from the Huan country to the Sky Patrol City. However, the strange thing was that after the Sword Tomb disappeared for 100 years, some subtle celestial phenomena began to appear in the vicinity of the Sword Tomb, forming a faintly discernible barrier. These celestial phenomena changed very slowly and did not take shape for hundreds of years. It was far less powerful than the previous Sword Tomb, but after all, there was a trend. If 1,000 years were not enough, another Sword Tomb was bound to appear after 10,000 years or even 100,000 years. Therefore, the sword cultivators of the Huan country sent a large number of people to investigate the nearby area, trying to find the source of the celestial phenomena. However, after decades, no sword sect could find the cause. The sword cultivators of the Huan country had no choice but to attribute all of this to the changes of heaven and earth and give up the idea of finding the source. Of course, the Yi clan master was not going to the Sword Tomb. After flying hundreds of miles away from the Sky Patrol City, he stopped and released his divine sense to take a look. He raised his hand and sent the messenger flying sword that he had previously received into the air. The flying sword flew like a spirit snake to a mountain range. A moment later, 2 valiant second-grade sword transformation swordsmen flew out of the mountain range. When the 2 swordsmen landed in front of the Yi clan ancestor, they bowed and saluted. Juniors Qin Jing and Qing Pai greet Ancestor Yi. 2 sword friends, please rise. The old man did not dare to neglect and hurriedly raised his hand to help the 2 up. He said, "May I know what urgent matter has called this old man out of the Sky Patrol City?" The tall man with a red face was the Void Heaven Sword School's Qin Jing. He looked at the bright sword sex Qing Pai and said with a wry smile, "Friend Qing Pai, why don't you explain this matter?" Ancestor Yi. Qing Pai pondered for a moment and said, "The plan we discussed earlier has some sudden changes. Juniors do not dare to act rashly, so we asked Ancestor Yi to come out of the city and discuss it with us." "What changes?" The Yi clan master frowned and asked curiously, "As far as this old man knows, the Fortune Gate's disciples from all over the 3 countries have gathered in the Sky Patrol City. However, due to our intentional obstruction, this news did not reach the Mountain Patrol Sword Sect's ears. Since the Mountain Patrol Sword Sect does not know, the Flying Feather Sect and Quilted Mountain Sect are even more unlikely to know. What changes can there be?" "Ahem." Qing Pai coughed awkwardly and said in a low voice, "It's like this." Unfortunately, before he could finish speaking, a sword cry rang out from the mountain range where Qing Pai and the others had flown out. This sword cry was like a dragon's roar, shaking the surrounding wilderness. Following this sword cry, a scarlet sword light soared into the sky like a flying dragon, rushing straight into the snowy night. P.S. Fellow Taoists who like this book, please subscribe to it at Qidian, vote for it, vote for it, vote for it, give it a tip, and... Chapter 5171. Damn it! Seeing such a strange yet powerful sword shadow, how could the Yi clan master not know what the change that Qing Pai was talking about was? He cursed softly, "This sword momentum. Won't the Mountain Patrolling Sword Sect in the Sky Patrol City discover it? If the Mountain Patrolling Sword Sect, Flying Feather Sect, and Quilted Mountain Sect are all here, what we have been planning for a long time. We don't have to do any more." Not waiting for the Yi clan head to finish his words, Shua. That soaring sword light suddenly converged. It was really like a dragon swinging its tail in midair, flying towards the Yi clan head and the others. Wherever the sword light passed, the previously arrogant sword sound was forcefully converged, transforming into a sharp whistling sound that pierced towards the Yi clan head. Senior Lingjin. The Yi clan master's expression changed greatly. He glanced at Qing Pai and Qin Jing and finally knew why they were in a dilemma. After the crimson sword light, there was another sword light that was much dimmer. When the 2 sword lights flew in front of the Yi clan master and the rest who were standing respectfully, the sword light converged rapidly and 2 sword cultivators appeared from the sword light. The first one gradually turned into the appearance of an old man. The old man's face was crimson red and his gaze was like a sword. When his eyes turned slightly, it was as if he wanted to see through the Yi clan master's body. The one behind him also had a crimson face, but he was slightly younger and looked like a middle-aged man. The Yi clan master, who was standing respectfully, bowed and said, "Greetings, seniors Wolingjian." This old man was the previous sword master of the Soaring Wind Sword Sect, Zhuo Ming. Yi Yaotian. Zhuo Ming looked coldly at the Yi clan master. His tone was no longer like the sword sound of the sword transformation realm, but like a cool breeze. "You're really bold, how dare you plot against the Sky Patrol City of the Sword Cultivators? Junior doesn't dare." The Yi clan master named Yi Yaotian did not dare to stand up. He lowered his head and said, "Junior's Yi clan is also in Huan country, I dare not betray my clan. I'm just planning for a more secure Sky Patrol City for the sword cultivators." Seeing that Yi Yaotian's expression was normal, Zhuo Ming smiled and said, "You're right. Back then, I joined forces with Qing Minghua of the Bright Sword Sect, Ruotian of the Skyscraper Sword Sect, Qilian Dai of the Black Phoenix Sword Sect, and Chong Taishu of the Void Heaven Sword Sect to set up the Heaven One Green Light Sword Formation to take back the Sky Patrol City from the Dao cultivators. However, not only did the Dao cultivators of my Hing country not value the great contribution of the Five Sword Sect, they also did not value the defense of the Sky Patrol City. The five great sword sects have not been in control of the Sky Patrol City for as long as the Flying Feather Sect and the Quilted Mountain Sect. What's more, the defense of the Sky Patrol City is practically non-existent now. There's no difference when Dao cultivators enter the Sky Patrol City. Indeed. Yi Yao Tian hurriedly smiled and said, I just can't stand the way those weapon cultivators and beast cultivators do things. They think that they are the masters of Sky Patrol City just because they are in charge of it. My Yi clan asked them to bend the rules for some matters, but they ignored us and showed no mercy at all. Zhuo Ming nodded and said, it's time to teach them a lesson. We can also take advantage of this opportunity to reorganize the order of the Sky Patrol City. If I were still the sword master of the Soaring Wind Sword Sect, you wouldn't have to worry about this. I would have already made arrangements. However, I don't care about the affairs of the Sword Sect now, so it's not easy to do these things. I'm very gratified that you all have such intentions. How can the Soaring Wind Sword Sect miss out on such an opportunity? Yes. Yi Yao Tian hurriedly echoed, the Soaring Wind Sword Sect is one of the five great sword sects that set up the Heaven Azure Light Sword Formation. I also wanted to contact the Sword Master of your sword sect, but there are only the Mountain Patrol Sword Sect, the Flying Feather Sect, and the Quilted Mountain Sect in the Sky Patrol City. Only my Yi clan, the Void Heaven Sword School, and the Bright Sword Sect can handle it. That's why I didn't visit your sword sect. Now that Senior is here, it's the will of heaven, and it's also in line with my previous thoughts. I implore Senior to extend a hand and take care of the chaos in the Sky Patrol City. I also hope Senior can support us after the changes in the Sky Patrol City, ha ha ha. Zhuo Ming laughed and raised his hand to point at the swordsman next to him and said, this is Ling Jiju of the Soaring Wind Sword Sect. I'll leave the matters here to him. You all can plan this matter freely. No matter what happens, no matter what waves it causes in the Heng Nation and the Three Kingdoms, I'll bear it for you. Zhuo Ming emphasized the Three Kingdoms. How could Yi Yao Tian not know that Zhuo Ming was referring to the benefits of the Fortune Gate? He hurriedly replied, Senior, please don't worry. How can I let the sword friends of the Soaring Wind Sword Sect do it for nothing? Not to mention that the order of the Sky Patrol City will be set by Senior and the others in the future, even the Fortune Gate will be taught a lesson by Ling Jianyu. Zhuo Ming smiled slightly and didn't say anything more. He only left a sentence, since that's the case, I'm relieved. You all can discuss it slowly. After saying that, Zhuo Ming's figure flickered and turned into a sword. But at this time, he suddenly raised his head and looked to the west. He sneered, the three devil bastards are here. It seems that I'll have to teach them a lesson. Don't stretch your hands too far. Although Zhuo Ming's words weren't directed at Yi Yao Tian, the implicit warning was clear. Yi Yao Tian's face burned. He didn't dare to be negligent and hurriedly bowed, Senior, please don't worry. I've cooperated with the Void Heaven Sword School, the Bright Sword Sect, and the Heavenly Demon Sect very appropriately. Our principle is that the matters of the sword cultivators belong to the sword cultivators and the matters of the Dao cultivators belong to the Heavenly Demon Sect. We won't betray the interests of the Heng Nation sword cultivators for the sake of immediate benefits. And, that's good. Zhuo Ming glanced at Yi Yao Tian and said indifferently, I've already asked about this matter. I know that you've done things appropriately and haven't crossed the line. That's why I'm relieved to have Jiju come over to assist you. Left spirit sword. Ling Jiju hurriedly added, you haven't appeared in the mortal world recently, so I'm afraid you don't know. These sects that use the Fortune Gate's name are growing like a rolling snowball, and there are signs of them surpassing the Heavenly Demon sect. Sword Friend Yi, Sword Friend Qin, and Sword Friend Qing are probably afraid that the three sects won't be able to control the situation, so they lured the Heavenly Demon sect into the situation, right? Yes, yes. Hearing Ling Jiju's words, Yi Yaotian hurriedly nodded and said, Sword Friend Ling is right. Although the strength of the Fortune Gate's disciples isn't high, there are too many of them. I'm afraid we won't be able to control them and destroy the Sky Patrol City, Ming coldly snorted and said, if you can think of the Heavenly Demon sect, how can you not think of the other four sects of the Hang Nation? How can the Heavenly Demon sect's chickens and dogs compare to our sword cultivator warriors? Yi Yaotian's forehead was covered in sweat, but he didn't dare to say anything. Fortunately, Yi Yaotian did not have to feel awkward for too long. After the time it takes to brew a cup of tea, 3 cultivators who appeared to be Dao cultivators flew over. However, the person in the lead was thin and skinny, as if he could be blown away by a gust of wind. The person behind him was bald like a monk, but his face was ferocious, and he was even more ferocious and detestable than ordinary people. As for the last person, he had a clear face, and his clothes were clean. He looked like a scholar. The 3 of them flew closer and looked at Yi Yaotian and the others in confusion. Just as they were about to ask about Ming and Ling Jiju's origins, Kang. Dazzling sword light suddenly emitted from Ming's body, enveloping several miles around him. Streams of sword qi surrounded the 3 of them like dragons, as if they could devour them at any time. Seeing that the 3 of them were scared witless by Ming's sword intent, Yi Yaotian took the opportunity to say in a low voice, 3 friends, quickly come and kowtow to my Hang Nation Ming, Spirit Sword School. Spirit Sword School Senior. The 3 disciples of Heavenly Demon sect turned pale with fright and hurriedly bowed. They said, we are Yu Zhongkue, Vice Sect Leader of the 4th Heavenly Demon sect, Yang Ji, Vice Sect Leader of the 6th Heavenly Demon sect, and Yao Qingxi, Vice Sect Leader of the 8th Heavenly Demon sect, greet Seniors Wa. You are just Dao cultivators in the Golden Core realm, how dare you call yourself sect leader? Ming sneered, as if he didn't care to talk to the 3 disciples of Heavenly Demon sect. He turned into sword light and rushed towards the direction of the sword catacomb, quickly disappearing into the night sky. Yi Yaotian and the others did not dare to be negligent and respectfully sent them off. When they raised their heads, the bitterness on Yi Yaotian's face had already disappeared. He smiled at the 3 Heavenly Demon sect Vice Sect Masters who were confused and did not know what was going on. Vice Sect Masters, please rise. Left Ling Jian has already left. Clan Leader Yi. Yang Ji felt that the cold sword light around him didn't disappear much. He lowered his voice and said, what is going on? Yi Yaotian glanced at Ling Jiju, raised his hand and introduced, come, let me introduce Ling Jiju from the Ling Feng Sword Sect to you 3 Dao friends. I, Ling Jiju, pay my respects to the 3 Vice Sect leaders. Ling Jiju was already a 2nd-grade sword transformation realm cultivator. Naturally, he didn't take the 3 Vice Sect leaders of Heavenly Demon sect seriously. He cupped his fists and answered proudly. We don't dare. Yang Ji and the others saw this. Although Yi Yaotian didn't explain, they already understood what was going on. They hurriedly bowed and said, greetings to Senior Ling, 3 Vice Sect leaders, please rise. Ling Jiju smiled and said, I have been sent by Spirit Sword School to trouble the 3 of you. When Ling Jiju mentioned Ming, the 3 Vice Sect leaders of Heavenly Demon sect immediately thought of the sword light Ling Jiju just now. A shiver involuntarily appeared on the surface of their bodies, so cold that it seeped into their bones. Yi Yao Tian took the opportunity to repeat Zhuo Ming's words. How would the three vice sect leaders of Heavenly Demon sect dare to disobey? They nodded their heads like chicks pecking at rice. After Yi Yao Tian finished speaking, he said to Ling Jiju, Dao friend Ling, time is of the essence. How about we discuss how to deal with the fortune gate that is about to arrive? Ling Jiju hurriedly replied, Patriarch Yi is too polite. There is no need to discuss. After all, the Yi clan, Void Heaven Sword School, and Bright Sword Sect have been planning this for a long time. My High Wind Sword Sect was the last to join. I don't know much about the previous situation, so I don't dare to speak casually. I'm afraid that I'll disrupt the arrangements of the three sword friends, and the three vice sect leaders. My High Wind Sword Sect has already mobilized 30% of our disciples to the snowy plains. These disciples are completely under the command of the 6 of you. Moreover, in terms of dealing with the aftermath, my sword ancestor has also instructed us to prioritize the interests of the 4 clans. P.S. Fellow Taoists who like this book, please subscribe to it at Qidian, vote for it, vote for it, vote for it, donate, and... Chapter 5172. Without waiting for Ling Jiju to finish, Yi Yao Tian looked at Qin Jing and Qing Pai and said, Since sword friend Ling said so, how can we not return the favor? Let's go, we must discuss this matter properly and not disappoint Ling Jian. The 3 Heavenly Demon Sect Vice Sect Masters also smiled and said, Yes, yes, we will listen to Senior Ye's orders and not disappoint Ling Jian. Ha, alright, Yi family head and 5 sword friends, please make the decision. Ling Jiju also laughed and cupped his fists at the 6 people. We will listen. Void Heaven Sword School's Qin Jing and Clear Sword Sect's Qing Pai also had a knot in their hearts, but they didn't dare to show it in front of Zhuo Ming. Now that the High Wind Sword Sect's conditions weren't harsh, the knot in their hearts slowly disappeared. They smiled and said, with sword friend Ye's words, we can rest assured. This matter was initiated by sword friend Yi, we will listen to sword friend Ye's orders. Haha, this old man is afraid. Yi Yao Tian looked at the 3 people meaningfully and raised his hand, sword friends, please, sword friend Yi, please. The others raised their hands and invited Yi Yao Tian to go first. Yi Yao Tian pondered for a moment and flew into the depths of the mountain range. Under Ling Jiju's modesty, Qin Jing and Qing Pai went first. Ling Jiju looked at Yu Zhongkue and the others, but how could they dare to go first? He hurriedly and respectfully invited Ling Jiju to fly first, and he and the others walked last. After all, this was something that the Yi clan, Void Heaven Sword School, Bright Sword Sect, and Heavenly Demon Sect had planned for a long time. With the addition of the High Wind Sword Sect's strength, Ling Jiju had indeed handed over the High Wind Sword Sect's forces to Yi Yao Tian. Most of the time, they were only discussing how to divide the Fortune Gate and Sky Patrol City. Moreover, there was no need to be too detailed. As for the 3 deputy sect masters of the Heavenly Demon Sect, they didn't even dare to fart. Therefore, in less than an hour, Yi Yao Tian flew out from the mountain range and called the Yi clan's disciples who were guarding outside to return to Sky Patrol City. Seeing that dawn was approaching, as Yi Yao Tian had expected, Yu Tong came to visit him again. When they met, Yi Yao Tian went straight to the point, little friend Yu, what does Sir Immortal Envoy have to say? Yu Tong looked at Yi Yao Tian and said with a frown, Senior Yi, it looks like you mean, AI. Yi Yao Tian sighs and says, this old man is somewhat unworthy of Lord Immortal Envoy. After little friend Yu left, this old man immediately sent someone to send a message and scolded Shi Xiang. However, Shi Xiang's reply was also sincere. He said that he fell in love with Fairy Hong Xia at first sight and really wanted to become sword companions with her. Moreover, he was afraid that this old man wouldn't agree, so he took great pains to tell little friend Yu about this matter first. When he spoke up to hear, Yi Yao Tian hesitated for a moment, and then he probed. There are truly too few women in the world that can make Shi Xiang fall in love with them. Finding a direct descendant of my Yi clan has already become a headache for this old man. Now that he's finally found one, this old man feels that. Can I ask Lord Immortal Emissary to make an exception and give Shi Xiang and my Yi clan a chance under the circumstances that it doesn't affect the entire operation? The corner of Yu Tong's mouth revealed a trace of a smile. He said, Senior Yi, please don't worry. Lord Immortal Emissary was very displeased at first and was somewhat angry. After all, this matter has reached a critical point, so how could he complicate things? However, after this junior tried to persuade him for a long time, he calmed down and said that all marriages in the world are predestined by the heavens. Since the Yi clan's young master fell in love with Fairy Hongxia at first sight, this old man couldn't break up the affectionate couple. However, this old man didn't know if Fairy Hongxia had the same thoughts as the young master. After all, this junior had previously reported to this old man about Fairy Hongxia and Xiaohua. Xiaohua has been dead for hundreds of years. Even if Fairy Hongxia and Xiaohua had some emotional entanglements, it should have been destroyed by now, right? Yi Yao Tian said disdainfully. If Shi Xiang wasn't completely confident, why would he speak up? Not necessarily. Yu Tong shook his head. According to this junior's knowledge, Fairy Hongxia is very loyal to her feelings. In the hundreds of years since Xiaohua's death, she hasn't spoken a word to any male cultivator. If it weren't for Xiao Mao by the young master's side, we wouldn't have been able to invite her to Century City. Let's not care about Fairy Hongxia's attitude for now. Yi Yao Tian said, just tell us what Lord Immortal Emissary has instructed us to do. Lord Immortal Emissary said that the operation will proceed as planned, just as we discussed before. Yu Tong said solemnly, however, we can give the young master a chance during the operation. If the young master can really turn the pretense into reality, there's no harm in pushing the boat along with the current to accomplish this good deed. However, if the young master doesn't have the ability and Fairy Hongxia rejects the young master, then this old man will severely punish this little bastard. Before Yu Tong could finish speaking, Yi Yao Tian immediately interrupted, when this matter is over, I'll have him bring a bramble and ask for punishment from Lord Immortal Emissary. There's no need for that. Yu Tong waved his hand and said, Lord Immortal Emissary said that if this matter doesn't succeed, the young master should restrain himself and not do things that are arbitrary and unrealistic. Yes, this old man understands. Yi Yao Tian hurriedly bowed and said, this old man already understands Lord Immortal Emissary's meaning. Little friend Yu, please convey this old man's gratitude to Lord Immortal Emissary. Well said, well said. Yu Tong returned the bow and said, this junior will take his leave now and immediately report this matter to Lord Immortal Emissary. The arrangements for Century City will depend on senior. Little friend Yu, please. Yi Yao Tian smiled and said, this old man won't see you off. Yu Tong replied, I dare not trouble Senior Yi. As soon as they turned around, a meaningful smile appeared on the faces of the old man and the young man. Night had passed, and day had arrived. The falling snowflakes above Century City did not slow down at all. As the light curtain above the sky became brighter, the snowflakes fell even more heavily. Yu Tong walked slowly on the street with a calm expression on his face. His starry eyes were even colder. The falling snowflakes floating in front of his eyes could not cause the slightest ripple in his cold eyes. When he turned a corner, he saw sword cultivators patrolling Century City flying past him. He stopped for a moment and turned his eyes. A sneer appeared at the corner of his mouth as if he had just woken up from his contemplation. He muttered softly, humans are really greedy, clang. 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 Right at this moment, bell tolls resounded from the tall city wall behind Yutong. However, the expressions of the sword cultivators who'd just approached Yutong changed drastically. They glanced at each other and cried out in alarm, "Enemy attack! Is this the sound of an enemy attack? How? How is this possible?" As they spoke, several sword cultivators soared into the sky and flew straight to the city wall. Yutong was stunned and hurriedly turned around to look. He saw that all over Sentry City, as the bell rang, the patrolling sword cultivators flew up one after another. Near the city lord mansion, sword cultivators swarmed out in groups and flew around Sentry City. Obviously, they were going to strengthen the defense. After a dozen bell rings, it stopped, but after half a cup of tea's time, dang dang dang. It sounded even more urgent, and during this short pause, there was the ear-piercing sound of swords piercing through the air. Yutong pondered for a moment, and his face showed excitement. He pinched his chin and whispered, "If I'm not wrong, this should be the signal of an enemy attack. At this time, who dares to attack Sentry City? I'm afraid it's only the Fortune Gate that has been tricked. According to my thinking, this enemy attack should be 10 days later, but I didn't expect that the Fortune Gate that swallowed the bait is not an ordinary sect. They actually disrupted my deployment and launched an attack in advance. However, the bait is bait, and the prey is the prey. Since the plan is set, how can a salted fish turn the tables? However, I've been planning for so long, please don't let anything go wrong." After saying that, Yutong's figure swayed and disappeared strangely. He was really worried about letting Yun Guichong be the mastermind for such a big matter. Unlike the confident Yutong, Yi Guxing, who had just landed on top of the city wall, had a confused look on his face. Not knowing what to do, he looked at the swordsman who was guarding the city wall and growled, "Meng Peng, are you serious? Sentry City is surrounded by Dao sect's cultivators?" Meng Peng sighed. He understood Yi Guxing's doubts. Even Meng Peng himself could not believe it when he saw the message. It was just an ordinary signal of an enemy attack. It was only after he received more messages that he sent out the emergency signal. Thus, he nodded and said, "Yes, I can confirm it, otherwise I wouldn't have sent out the emergency signal. However, I don't know which Dao sects are besieging us. I've sent out all the patrolling disciples." Unfortunately, before he could finish, Yi Guxing frowned and pointed to a dozen tool cultivators in yellow robes in the distance and asked, "What about them? I remember that they're also disciples of the patrolling team." Meng Peng smiled bitterly and said, "Reporting to the sword master on duty, the patrolling disciples of Sentry City are divided into 5 teams. I have 3 teams from the Mountain Patrol Sword Sect, 1 each from the Flying Feather Sect and the Quilted Mountain Sect. I only have the authority to dispatch the 3 teams from the Mountain Patrol Sword Sect. I don't have the authority to dispatch the other 2 teams. Where are the patrolling generals of the Flying Feather Sect and the Quilted Mountain Sect today?" Yi Guxing's eyes were filled with anger as he growled and asked. Meng Peng shook his head and said, "I don't know. I only completed my task according to the arrangement of the sword master on duty. I didn't dare to ask about the Flying Feather Sect and the Quilted Mountain Sect. D*****. Yi Guxing cursed. At this moment, there were a few rumbling sounds of magic weapons. 3 tool cultivators who were almost naked and had many strange runes on their bodies flew out from Sentry City. They dashed in mid-air and looked unscrupulous. The tool cultivator in the lead was thin and tall. His pair of withered yellow eyes were shining. He scanned Yi Guxing with his cold divine thought and growled, "Fellow Sword Yi, I heard from Zhuang Hong that there's an enemy attack in Sentry City. What's the exact situation? Who dares to pluck a tiger's fur? I'll tear them apart and eat them. P.S. Fellow cultivators who like this book, please subscribe to it at Chidian. Vote for it, vote for it, vote for it, give it a tip, and... Chapter 5173. Yi Guxing looked at a squarish weapon cultivator behind the weapon cultivator and replied faintly, Zhuanghong, Zhu Jing is also the city guard general. Since he has already reported it, what else do you need me to say? The squarish weapon cultivator, Zhu Jing, might be a little embarrassed, but he did not show it on his face. He said with a calm expression, Sword Master Yi, I received the news and hurried to report it to my sword master, so the information I received is not accurate. Ta. The leader of the weapon cultivators, Zhuanghong, smiled and said, Zhu Jing is only defending a corner of the Sky Patrol City. How can he know more than General Meng? Moreover, the defense and affairs of the entire Sky Patrol City are under Sword Master Ye's control. I'm only here to assist. My Flying Feather sect naturally doesn't know more than the Sky Patrol Sword sect. Yi Guxing sighed slightly when he heard Zhuanghong exculpating Zhu Jing. He also knew that the three sides of the Sky Patrol City's defense could not be messed up in the face of unknown enemies, so he said, it's like this. Unfortunately, before he could finish his sentence, a strong gust of wind howled as several huge beast cultivators descended from the sky. The beast cultivator in front was several times larger than an ordinary person. His face was covered in white hair. Before he landed on the ground, he roared like a bear, fellow swordsman Yi, which blind bastard dares to offend my Sky Patrol City? Yi Guxing felt a primitive violence from this beast cultivator. He did not dare to mock Zhuanghong like he did before. Instead, he changed his tone and said faintly, Sword Master Xueqing, you came at the right time. We were just worried. The city guard general of the Sky Patrol City today is Meng Peng. His patrol team found unknown Dao cultivator disciples approaching the Sky Patrol City, but we don't know how many there are and why they are here. Roar, isn't that simple? The beast cultivator, Xueqing, roared and turned around. Crane Lord, you're the city guard general of the Quilted Mountain sect today. Why aren't you going to investigate? Yes, your subordinate obeys. A thin and tall beast cultivator behind Xueqing hurriedly flashed out and flew into the sky. When a yellow light flashed behind him, a pair of fleshy wings extended from his body. He then shouted a few times and the previously lazy beast cultivators immediately became spirited. Each of them used their abilities to fly into the sky and disappeared after a while. Seeing that the beast cultivators' Quilted Mountain sect had taken action, the weapon cultivators' Flying Feather sect was too embarrassed to refuse. Zhuanghong turned around and gave a few instructions. Zhu Jing also led the weapon cultivators' patrol team and flew out of Sky Patrol City. Reporting to the three sword masters on duty. Meng Peng saw Yi Guxing winking at him and hurriedly bowed. I was guarding the city when I received a report from my patrolling disciples. If I'm not mistaken, other than the area where the sword tomb is located, a large number of Dao cultivator disciples have appeared in the other areas. Madhav is this the Great War of Dao and Sword? After listening to Meng Peng's brief report, Xueqing became a little excited and shouted, why didn't I hear anything beforehand? Zhuanghong was also surprised. He turned to look at Yi Guxing. At this moment, Yi Guxing's brows were tightly knitted. He had thought a lot during this short period of time. He looked at Zhuanghong and Xueqing and nodded solemnly. What sword friend Xue said makes sense. What? Is the Great War of Sword Dao really about to start? This time, even Zhuanghong could not remain calm. He exclaimed, how's that possible? The three kingdoms of Dao cultivators. How can they start the Great War of Sword Dao first? Why not? Xueqing was very happy when he heard Yi Guxing agree with his idea. He shouted, Previously, when Sky Patrol City was controlled by Dao cultivators, it was Hing Nation's sword cultivators who started the Great War of Sword Dao. Now that Sky Patrol City is controlled by sword cultivators, it's only natural that the Dao cultivators will start the Great War of Sword Dao. No, it's not that simple. Zhuanghong shook his head and said, putting aside the fact that it's only been less than 1,000 years since the last Great War of Dao and Sword Cultivators, there's no need for Sword Dao and Dao Cultivators to start a Great War of Sword Dao. Let's talk about the current Dawn Rain continent. Apart from Sword Cultivators, Dao Cultivators from the three kingdoms of cultivation, there's also the Heavenly Demonic Sect. Moreover, the Heavenly Demonic Sect's strength is expanding rapidly. There's a faint tripartite balance of forces. How could the Great War of Dao and Sword Dao be started so easily? Don't the Dao cultivators fear the Heavenly Demonic Sect's strength? Yes. Yi Guxing nodded and said, Sword Friend Zhuang is right. There's no reason for the Dao cultivators to start the Great War of Dao and Sword Dao. In the last Great War of Dao and Sword Dao, Heng Nation's sword cultivators achieved an unprecedented victory. The three nations of Dao cultivators suffered a great loss. It's impossible for them to recover in just a few hundred years. Moreover, the Million Mang Mountains have been very peaceful for the past few hundred years. Heng Nation has not deployed any troops in the Million Mang Mountains area. Their strength has been increasing while the Dao cultivators' strength has been declining due to the great change in heaven and earth's spiritual energy. How could they start the Great War of Dao and Sword Dao in a hurry? Motherf ****. Xue Cheng was confused. He asked curiously, Yi Guxing, didn't you agree with me just now? Why did you change your mind after I finished speaking? Ha! Yi Guxing laughed. I agree with your last sentence. My last sentence. Xue Cheng was even more confused. That's right. Zhuanghong nodded slightly and said, whether it's the Great War of Dao and Sword Dao or the siege of the city by other Dao cultivators, why didn't we hear anything about it beforehand? There's definitely a problem. Yi Guxing was shocked. He looked at Meng Peng and said, Meng Peng, do you have anything to say? Meng Peng's forehead was covered in sweat. He said with some fear, Sword Master Yi, Sword Master Xue's words reminded me. I suddenly remembered that in the past few months, many of the patrolling disciples in Sky Patrol City have died, damn it. Yi Guxing cursed angrily, why didn't you report this to me earlier? Meng Peng opened his mouth to speak, but he quickly swallowed his words. He lowered his head and said, Sword Master Yi, it's my negligence. After all, there are patrolling disciples who die in Sky Patrol City every year. Although many have died in the past few months, it's still within a manageable range, so... Meng Peng's hesitation fell into Yi Guxing's eyes. He thought for a moment and understood Meng Peng's difficulties. It was not that Meng Peng did not report it, but it was clearly that the three sword masters who were in charge of the City Lord Mansion, including himself, did not pay attention to Meng Peng's report. Moreover, Yi Guxing knew very well that there were advantages and disadvantages to having the three sword sects in charge of Sky Patrol City. The past 1,000 years of peace had long made him and the others let down their guard. Their sense of smell was not as sharp as it was 1,000 years ago. However, Yi Guxing did not show it. Instead, he scolded, if that's the case, why don't you hurry up and find out? Yes, I'll. Meng Peng did not know if Yi Guxing understood. He did not dare to gamble. Since he did not intend to make it clear, he could only take responsibility. He hurriedly agreed and did not dare to delay. He urged his body to fly away. However, at this moment, woo! Above Sky Patrol City, a black shadow that was hundreds of feet tall flew down from the dense red clouds. When it flew closer, Meng Peng could see clearly that it was the light shadow of a green crane. The green crane flapped its wings and swept away the snow nearby. When the green crane landed, its wings trembled strangely and contracted. The huge light shadow slowly disappeared, revealing the figure of Crane Lord. "How is it?" Xueqing grinned and asked, "Did you find out anything?" "General Meng, you don't have to go." Although Crane Lord's figure was revealed, his body was still trembling uncontrollably. There were light red beads of sweat between his eyebrows, but he said proudly, "I've found out that there are nearly 2 million Dao cultivators surrounding Sky Patrol City more than 500 miles away." "What? 2 million Dao cultivators?" Yi Guxing was not the only one who turned pale. Zhuanghong and Xueqing's expressions changed drastically as they exclaimed, Are you sure?" Crane Lord rolled his slightly withered eyes and replied, "Of course, I'm not completely sure. After all, I can only find out the approximate number of cultivators in a certain direction in such a short time. However, based on the number of cultivators in this area, I estimate that there are more than 2 million Dao cultivators surrounding the city." Seeing how He Jun's body only stopped trembling as he spoke, Yi Guxing knew that He Jun must have used some kind of beast cultivation secret technique. In such a short period of time, he had rushed to a certain direction to check the number of people before returning. Even he didn't have such a magical ability. However, he looked at Crane Lord's calm expression and did not panic like him and the others. He pondered for a moment and said, "Since you said there are 2 million Dao cultivators, then there are 2 million Dao cultivators. But, it seems like you have a plan. Could it be that you already know the origin of these Dao cultivators?" Crane Lord nodded proudly and said, "That's right. I've found out that although there are many Dao cultivators, they are nothing in the eyes of the Three Sword Sect." "Oh." Before Yi Guxing could speak, Xueqing asked curiously, "Why do you say so? Could it be that the cultivation of these Dao cultivators is extremely low?" Yi Guxing thought of a possibility and asked tentatively. "That's right." Crane Lord's stiff face squeezed out a smile and replied, "I don't know about the situation in other places, but from what I've found out, the highest cultivation level is estimated to be at the middle stage of Golden Core." "Damn it!" Xueqing shouted, Isn't this the great war between Dao and Sword?" Yi Guxing was also dumbfounded. He looked at Zhuanghong and both of their eyes were filled with disbelief. Zhuanghong groaned softly, "More than 2 million Dao cultivators? Which sects in the Three Kingdoms of Cultivation gathered this number? Where was their meeting hall located? Why haven't I heard anything about this in Sky Patrol City?" Xueqing sneered and said, "Nonsense, didn't the Mountain Patrol Sword sect kill many of their patrolling disciples? I think they must have found something. P.S. Fellow cultivators who like this book, please subscribe to it at Qidian, vote for it, vote for it, vote for it, give it a tip, and thank you to Benben, Hooligan Hero, Kai Kai in the Rain, Lonely Asylum, Yong Chang, Honghua, Heaven-Defying Radish, Dao Master, Deep Breath, and Ferlin for their tips. Today, I'll release a chapter to satisfy your cravings, then I'll release it slowly. Chapter 5174. Doesn't your Quilted Mountain sect have any patrolling disciples? Yi Guxing asked coldly. Xueqing patted his chest and said proudly, "Of course. It's simple." Yi Guxing retorted, "That's because your Sword's Gate didn't send any patrolling disciples out of the Sky Patrol City. Only my Sky Patrol Sword Gate is responsible for patrolling the entire Sky Patrol City." "Who said so?" Xueqing roared. Ahem, Zhuanghong coughed and said, "There's no need to say anything else now. The three of us must not be suspicious of each other. Only by working together can we overcome this crisis." Xueqing was about to say something when a sword chime sounded. Everyone quickly looked up and saw a blood-red sword ray landing in front of Mengpeng in the blink of an eye. Mengpeng did not dare to delay and quickly grabbed the sword ray. He looked at it and respectfully presented it to Yi Guxing, reporting to Sword Lord Yi, "It's a blood sword message from a patrolling disciple." Yi Guxing took the blood-red sword that was a few inches long and as wide as a finger. He took a deep breath and flicked his finger to send a sword ray into the sword. Then, a hurried voice sounded, reporting to Meng Jiangjun, "I've found out that the ones besieging our Sky Patrol city are the disciples of Swallow Mountain Manor." Swallow Mountain Manor. Everyone was stunned and looked at each other. It was as if they had never heard of this Tao cultivation sect before. Is it a very powerful cultivation family? Zhuang Hong hesitated and asked Yi Guxing. Yi Guxing also shook his head blankly. At this time, Mengpeng seemed to have thought of something and hurriedly said, reporting to the three sword lords, "Swallow Mountain Manor is the biggest branch of the Fortune Gate. Could it be that the ones besieging the Sky Patrol city are the Fortune Gate?" See. Mengpeng's words seemed to have awakened everyone from their dreams. Yi Guxing, Zhuang Hong, and Xueqing all gasped and said, "That's right. It's the Fortune Gate." Yi Guxing then looked at the gloomy sky in the distance and said, "Among the 4 countries, only the Fortune Gate can send out 2 million disciples at once. Only in the so-called Fortune Gate, the strongest disciple is only at the intermediate Gold Core realm." Zhuang Hong added with a faint smile. "Damn it." Xueqing was relieved. He glanced at He Jun and laughed, "No wonder you said they were useless. No matter how many Fortune Gate disciples there are, how could they be a match for our Sky Patrol city's 3 Swords Gate?" However, Xueqing stopped abruptly at this point. His expression changed drastically as he looked at Yi Guxing and Zhuang Hong. His heart, which had just relaxed a little, immediately tightened. His eyes were filled with shock. Although Yi Guxing, Zhuang Hong, and Xueqing were not strong enough in the eyes of Yi Yaotian and the others, they were much stronger than Zhong Haoran, Fei Yunshu, and Zhong Zhan. It only took them a moment to realize something. Yi Guxing shouted without hesitation, "Quick, pass down the Sword Master's order and activate the sword formation of the Sky Patrol city, yes." Mengpeng didn't understand why the 3 sword masters on duty suddenly panicked, but he didn't hesitate to bow and leave. "Damn it." Xueqing cursed in his heart, "A mere Fortune Gate dares to covet our Sky Patrol city. There must be a great conspiracy behind this." Zhuang Hong also released his divine sense to check the surroundings. There was a hint of uneasiness on his face as he said in a low voice, "They clearly know that we are in the Sky Patrol city, but they still dare to besiege us. They must be instigated by a nascent Soul Realm Master." "That's right." A cold light flashed in Yi Guxing's eyes as he nodded, "If I'm not mistaken, these Fortune Gate disciples are just a cover. After they attack, there will be a nascent Soul Realm Master who will take advantage of the chaos to attack. Moreover, how could these scattered Fortune Gate disciples know how to seal the news and kill our Sky Patrol city's disciples without us knowing? If that's the case, our Sky Patrol city is in danger." Zhuang Hong frowned, "Our Sky Patrol city's battle force is in the open, while those hidden cultivators are in the dark. Although these 2 million Fortune Gate disciples are nothing to be afraid of, they are enough to entangle our Sky Patrol city swordsmen. If we are ambushed by those nascent Soul Realm Masters," Yi Guxing said coldly, "why do they have to go to this extent? These 2 million Fortune Gate disciples besieging our city is not a Dao sword battle, but a Dao sword battle. No matter the outcome of this battle, it will become the catalyst for another Dao sword battle." Hiss. Zhuang Hong and Xueqing gasped again and exclaimed, "That's right. This will become the blood evidence for the Dao sword cultivators to attack our Sky Patrol city." "Damn it." Xueqing gritted his teeth and said, "Are these Fortune Gate disciples brainless? Although the Fortune Gate is another major force on the Dawn Rain mainland after the Heavenly Demon sect, they are still in a state of disunity." Yigushing thought for a moment and said, in the past, the Heavenly Demon Sect and Black Heaven Sect became famous in a single battle, and no one dared to underestimate them. Now, the Fortune Gate wants to follow in the footsteps of the Heavenly Demon Sect and become famous in a single battle in the Sky Patrol City. Zhuanghong smiled bitterly and said, why didn't this *T Fortune Gate come earlier or later? Why did they come when our Three Swords Gates are in charge of the Sky Patrol City? Our Three Swords Gates are not the strongest in the Huan country. Oh. When Yigushing heard this, he quickly said, well said, sword friend Zhuang. The Sky Patrol City does not belong to our Mountain Patrolling Sword Gate, your Soaring Feather Sect, and the Quilted Mountain Sect. Now that all the sects have disciples in the Sky Patrol City, quick, get them to come out and fight. Xuecheng squinted his eyes and said, that's right, sword friend Yi is right. We should enjoy blessings and endure hardships together. How can they slack off when the Fortune Gate disciples are surrounding the city? Boom! At this moment, several sword lights as thick as a waterfall soared into the sky and fell rapidly in midair. The sword lights were like flowing water, and the sword lights were like swimming fishes. In less than half a cup of tea's time, the Sky Patrol City was firmly protected. As the Sky Patrol City's sword formation was laid out, the sword cultivators guarding the sword formation flew out one after another. However, looking at the sparse number of sword cultivators, even Zhuanghong and Xuecheng felt a little awkward. After all, the sword formation was laid out by sword cultivators. Weapon cultivators and beast cultivators could not help much. If the Three Swords Gates could fully activate the sword formation, the Mountain Patrolling Sword Gate disciples could not even activate 30% of the sword formation. In an instant, the three sword masters on duty understood why the Fortune Gate disciples would besiege the Sky Patrol City when they were on duty. Mengpeng! Yigushing shouted, his voice was like a sword's chime. Yes, sir. Mengpeng had already flown to the left. At this time, he responded and sped up his sword light, landing in front of everyone. Quickly pass down the city lord's order. Yigushing did not hesitate to take out a small golden sword and handed it to Mengpeng. Summon all the sword cultivators in the Sky Patrol City to face the enemy. Especially the Sword Gate disciples, form a sword formation on the city wall to defend against the enemy. Don't worry. Zhuanghong and Xuecheng looked at each other and spoke at the same time. They each took out a golden sword and handed it to Mengpeng. Take our flying swords, kill whoever dares to disobey. Yes, your subordinate obeys. Mengpeng respectfully took the three golden swords and looked around. He then waved his hand and led dozens of subordinates into the city to pass down the message. Thank you, sword friends. Seeing Mengpeng's figure disappear, Yigushing's heart felt relieved. He looked at Zhuanghong and Xuecheng and cupped his fists. After all, the effect of three golden swords was completely different from one golden sword. You're welcome. Zhuanghong and Xuecheng hurriedly returned the gesture. This is what we should do. Yigushing stood up and pondered for a moment. He looked at Xuecheng and said, Sword friend Xue, I have a presumptuous request, I hope you can agree to it. Xuecheng hurriedly replied, Oh. What is it, sword friend Yi? Please tell us. Yigushing looked at He Jun and smiled bitterly. What else can it be? The other sword cultivators in Hing Country are unaware that we're surrounded in Sky Patrol City. Judging by the situation, the Dao cultivators must have cut off the communication between Sky Patrol City and Hing Country. Although there is a secret teleportation formation from Sky Patrol City to the outskirts of the city, since this teleportation formation was built by Dao cultivators, they must know where the teleportation formation leads to. Our first priority is to send the message back to Hing Country. At this time in Sky Patrol City, the only one who can accomplish this task is he June? Zhuang Hong immediately understood Yi Guxing's meaning and added, however, this trip is too dangerous. Even if sword friend Yi has thought of this, you can't not tell sword friend Shui, right? Sigh, yes. Yi Guxing sighed and replied, this is a trip to the tiger's den. I can't use the sword master token to give orders. I can only ask for your help. Xueqing naturally thought that the two of them were telling the truth. He looked at He Jun and did not say anything directly. It was obvious that he was asking for his opinion. After all, everyone knew that there must be nascent soul grandmasters near Sky Patrol City. If He Jun wanted to send a message, he would have to go through the nascent soul grandmasters first. If that's the case, why don't I make the trip? He Jun was still as arrogant as ever. All right. Xueqing clapped his hands and said, He Jun, I know that it's unfair for you to be the general guarding the city. After this battle, I'll definitely, Sword Master Shui. Before Xueqing could finish, He Jun raised his hand and said, say no more. It won't be too late to tell me when I return to Hing Country. All right. Xueqing raised his hand and patted He Jun's shoulder. Don't worry, I won't go back on my word. I'll go now. As He Jun spoke, his body trembled again. As his muscles intertwined and twisted, feathers emerged from his body. Then, the muscles on his back turned into wings. He flapped his wings and was about to soar into the sky. Vote for it, give it a recommendation vote, bookmark it, and tip it. Thank you to Benbin, Hooligan Swordsman, Kai Kai in the Rain, Lonely Asylum, Theblisky 1, and other fellow Taoists for their tips. Yong Chang, Honghua, Nature-Defying Radish, Tao Lord, Deep Breath, Ferlin, and other fellow Taoists for their tips. I'll add more chapters for all of you today. At the same time, I'd like to thank everyone who follows the path of spirit cultivation. Fellow Taoists, your strong support and tireless reading gave me the strength to write. Chapter 5175. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation. However, Lord Crane suddenly waved his hand and a blood-red amber-like object fell in front of Xueqing. Lord Crane said resolutely, Sword Master Shui, this is my blood feather of life. If I don't return to Huan Country smoothly, this blood feather of life will shatter. Xueqing, who had always been fearless, suddenly felt desolate when he saw the blood feather of life. He opened his mouth to say something but felt that it would be useless. He simply raised his hand and took the blood feather of life. He nodded and said, Go ahead, Lord Crane. Woo woo. Lord Crane flapped his wings and turned into a green crane again. He soared into the sky and disappeared in a moment. Sigh, I hope he can break through the siege. Xueqing sighed. If it's possible. Zhuang Hong said softly, I'd rather go out and see which sect is behind this. If you go out, won't you fall into their trap? Yi Guxing smiled. They can't wait for one of us to break through the siege so that they can defeat us one by one. They're too cunning. Xueqing cursed softly. Just as he was about to speak, a voice was heard from afar. Oh. Seniors, what's going on? I heard that there are disciples of Tao cultivators surrounding the city. Do you want us to defend against the enemy? Yi Guxing and the rest looked up. Wasn't that the handsome young master of the Yi clan, Yi Shixiang? Although Yi Shixiang addressed Yi Guxing and the rest as seniors, Yi Guxing and the rest did not dare to slight him. They quickly smiled and said to Yi Shixiang, who was a second-grade swordsman, Sword Master Yi, you're too kind. Although we're old friends with Elder Yi, you're also a swordsman. You don't have to call us seniors. Yi Shixiang said seriously, Senior Yi, you're wrong. Before I came to Sky Patrol City, the old man made it clear that I have to follow the three sword masters' orders. If I don't address the sword masters as my senior, I will be punished by the old man when I return. Xueqing seemed to dislike Yi Shixiang. He glanced at the hundreds of disciples behind him and sneered. Nephew Yi, you have a lot of disciples. It's as if there's going to be a battle in Sky Patrol City. Hee hee. Yi Shixiang smiled lightly. He knew in his heart that the Yi clan was very cautious before the Sword Dao Great War. Even in the Han Kingdom, only the Sword Master of the Swords Gate knew about it. Swordsmen like Xueqing who were only at the 3rd grade of the Illusory Sword or the 1st grade of the Transformation Sword would never know about it. It was only after the Great Sword Dao War that the Yi clan began to follow the trend and stand out with the rise of the cultivation families in the Three Kingdoms. This caused some sword sects to covet and be dissatisfied with them. Therefore, Xueqing's reaction today was completely within Yi Shixiang's expectations. He replied calmly, I've already reported this to the three sword masters when I entered Sky Patrol City. If it weren't for the sake of showing off the Yi clan's strength and wanting to form an alliance with the Taoist clans to fight for more benefits for the sword cultivators of our Han nation, I wouldn't have brought so many disciples here so ostentatiously. Ha! Yi Guxing laughed heartily. Since you brought so many disciples with you, it's a good time to use them today. Yi Guxing raised his hand and pointed into the distance. Nephew Yi, take a look. The left side of Sky Patrol City is now surrounded by nearly 1 million Taoist cultivators. Before Yi Guxing could finish, Yi Shixiang exclaimed, What? Sword Master Yi, you're right, aren't you? 1 million Taoist cultivators? This isn't a great Sword Dao War, is it? Why would we have the time to joke with you? Xueqing said coldly. If you don't believe me, go and see for yourself. Zhuanghong rolled his eyes and smiled. That's right. Nephew Yi, from the information we've just received, Sky Patrol City hasn't been completely besieged yet. We haven't told anyone about this yet. You have the strength of a 2nd-grade sword transformation realm cultivator. In terms of combat power, you're close to the late stage of the nascent soul realm. Instead of staying here to fight the enemy with us, why don't you bring the Yi clan's disciples out? Not only can you protect the Yi clan's descendants, but you can also send a message to the sword cultivators of Han Nation. While Zhuanghong was speaking, a soft caw sound was heard. The blood feather of life in Xueqing's hand suddenly cracked. Strands of dirty blood seeped out from the crack. Xueqing naturally didn't expect Lord Crane to be killed so quickly. He was shocked. Just as he was about to keep the blood feather of life, Yi Shixiang saw it and asked curiously, Senior Xue, what's that? Oh, it's nothing, it's nothing. Xueqing looked at Zhuanghong. The two of them exchanged glances. They were perfunctory and kept the broken blood feather of life as if nothing had happened. Sigh. Yi Shixiang acted as if he didn't know. He sighed and said, if it's just the Yi clan's disciples in Sky Patrol City, I'll definitely risk my life to break out. However, the Yi clan and the cultivator aristocratic families of the three nations are discussing the two alliances here. How can we leave them here and escape by ourselves? If that's the case, won't the Yi clan be regarded as a treacherous bunch? Wouldn't all of you be disgraced? Haha, that's true. Yi Guxing smiled and said, Nephew Yi, take a look and we'll discuss how to defend against the enemy later. I don't dare to say what we'll discuss. Yi Shixiang said humbly, I'll take a look first and report to all of you if I find anything. Wait. Xueqing suddenly shouted when he saw that Yi Shixiang was about to leave with his disciples. Yi Shixiang frowned slightly. However, he stopped and asked faintly, Senior, do you have any other instructions? You said that there are cultivator aristocratic families in Sky Patrol City discussing the alliance with the Yi clan. Xueqing asked. Yi Shixiang sneered in his heart. He was waiting for Xueqing to say this. However, he still raised his brows and pretended to be puzzled. Yes, what's wrong? Xueqing smiled and said, now that Sky Patrol City is surrounded by enemy cultivators, these cultivator aristocratic families naturally have to contribute to the defense of Sky Patrol City since they're in Sky Patrol City. Besides, Yi Jianyu, there are other Dao sect cultivators in Sky Patrol City, right? Ask them to come out and defend against the enemy with us sword cultivators. Forget it. Yi Guxing waved his hand and said, there aren't many Dao sect disciples. How can they contribute when they see Dao sect disciples besieging the city? They'll only add to the chaos. I want them to add to the chaos. Xueqing's eyes revealed a murderous glint. They're all Dao sect cultivators anyway. Kill as many as you can. Yi Shixiang hurriedly called out, Senior Xue, Dao sect cultivators are different from each other. Please don't treat them the same. Yi Guxing smiled and waved his hand. Nephew Yi, go take a look. Sword Lord Xue was just joking. Don't mind him, Yi Shixiang thought for a moment and smiled. Actually, Senior Xue is right. How about this? Our Yi clan has formed an alliance with the 4 aristocratic families of the 3 kingdoms. Since we're in an alliance, they should face the enemy with us. When I send my disciples back, ask them to come out as well. It'll be a good opportunity to test the alliance we've just formed. Xueqing clapped his hands and said, that's right, that's right. Since we're allies, we should live and die together. This is a rare opportunity to test us. Yi Guxing didn't know whether to laugh or cry as he looked at Yi Shixiang, then at Zhuanghong. Zhuanghong didn't say anything, so he could only wave his hand again and said, do as you wish. Junior understands. Yi Shixiang instructed a few of his disciples. The few disciples activated their sword lights and left. Just as Yi Shixiang was about to leave with his disciples, swish swish swish. A series of sword cries flew back from the surroundings of the Sky Patrol City. Needless to say, it was the news from the patrolling disciples that Ping sent out earlier. Xueqing was already impatient. Without waiting for the flying swords, he raised his right hand and slapped a huge bear paw light shadow on a messenger flying sword several hundred feet away. Clang! The flying sword vibrated and an anxious voice came from it, reporting to Sword Lord Yi, we've discovered more than 40,000 disciples of Yuanfeng Stockade in the southeast of Sky Patrol City. Yuanfeng Stockade? Yi Shixiang was stunned. He looked at Xueqing and asked curiously, which Dao sect is that? This is my Sky Patrol City's secret, why are you asking about it? Xueqing reprimanded. Yi Shixiang shrugged and waved his hand at his disciples. Disciples, follow this young master to scout the enemy's situation. Yes. The Yi family's disciples answered in unison, loud and clear. Reporting to Sword Lord Xue, we've discovered more than 60,000 Fortune Gates disciples in the Sky Patrol City. Before Yi Shixiang could fly too far, Zhuanghong opened another flying sword messenger and a patrolling disciple's voice came from it. Yi Shixiang didn't turn around, but there was a trace of a smile on his face as he flew closer to the Sky Patrol City sword formation and looked outside the city. At this time, there were still no signs of Fortune Gates disciples outside the city. There was only a vast expanse of snow, and the vicissitudes of life everywhere. Behind Yi Shixiang, flying sword messengers continued to fly back and forth, and the patrolling disciples' reports came one after another, discovered more than 90,000 Heaven Vine Towers disciples in the east of Sky Patrol City, discovered more than 30,000 Cloud Pavilion Forts disciples in the northeast of Sky Patrol City, discovered more than 40,000 unknown sword cultivators in the north of Sky Patrol City. After about half a cup of tea's time, these flying sword messengers slowly disappeared like moths to a flame. Yi Guxing, Zhuanghong, and Xueqing looked at each other. There was nothing unusual on their faces, but there was fear in their eyes. The scene of Crane King's blood-life feather shattering appeared in their eyes. They knew very well that these hundreds of thousands of Fortune Gate's disciples were merely the tip of the iceberg. Under the surface of the iceberg, there was a huge hand that could kill them and break through Sky Patrol City. P.S. Fellow Taoists who like this book, please subscribe to it at Qidian, vote for it, vote for it, vote for it, give it a tip, and... Thanks to fellow Taoists like Benbin, Hooligan Hero, Kai Kai in the Rain, Lonely Asylum, Theblisky 1, and other fellow Taoists like Yong Chang, Red Fire, Heaven-Defying Radish, Tao Master, Deep Breath, Ferlin, and other fellow Taoists like Benbin, Rogue Hero, Kai Kai in the Rain, Lonely Asylum, and other fellow Taoists like Yong Chang, Red Fire, Heaven-Defying Radish, Tao Master, Deep Breath, Ferlin, and other fellow Taoists like Yong Chang, Red Fire, Heaven-Defying Radish, Tao Master, Deep Breath, and Ferlin for their tips. Chapter 5176. Senior Yi. Yi Shixiang's voice could be heard. Junior has seen that the sword formation of our Sky Patrol City is impenetrable. It's not something an ordinary disciple can break through. However, Junior has a suggestion, but I don't know if I should say it. If you have something to say it quickly. Xueqing was a little annoyed and scolded as if Yi Shixiang wasn't a second-grade sword transformation realm sword cultivator. Yi Shixiang was flying over excitedly, but when he heard Xueqing's words, he froze and looked at Xueqing coldly. Xueqing, I respect you as the sword master of Sky Patrol City and a famous sword cultivator in the Quilted Mountain sect. Of course, it's also because my family's patriarch specially instructed me to call myself Junior. Don't be so shameless. Do you believe that this Yi won't wait for these Fortune Gate's disciples to come closer? This Yi will kill you in front of the Sky Patrol City right now. Yi Shixiang's expression changed and Xueqing was stunned. He suddenly realized that this sword cultivator who called himself Junior was a second-grade sword transformation realm sword cultivator. How could he scold him just because he was depressed? Although Xueqing's face had grown a lot of white mane due to his fusion with the spirit beast, his expression couldn't be seen. However, with his huge body and stiff body, who wouldn't know the awkwardness in his heart? Ha! Yi Guxing hurriedly smiled to smooth things over. Nephew Yi, please don't be offended. Sword friend Xue was also very anxious when he saw that our Sky Patrol City was surrounded. Didn't you just ask him what broke in his hand? To be honest, that was the lifeblood feather of our Quilted Mountain sect's He Jun. Before you came, He Jun was ordered to break out and report to the Huan country. However, he was killed in less than half a cup of tea's time. He Jun was the general of our Sky Patrol City. His strength might not be as good as Mengping, but in terms of escaping and flying, no one in our Sky Patrol City can compare to him. Hiss. Yi Shixiang took the opportunity to suck in a breath of cold air and retracted his gaze from Xueqing. He took the opportunity to ask, the situation is so serious. This is out of Junior's expectations. Junior has seen General He Jun before. Even he couldn't break out. It seems like we can only fight with our backs against the wall. Zhuanghong hurriedly said, that's right, Nephew Yi is right. We must work together to get through this crisis. Zhuanghong then paused for a moment and said meaningfully, Nephew Yi, since you've already broken out the Fortune Gate, I presume you already know who is besieging our Heavenly Patrol City. Do you have a good plan? Yi Shixiang shook his head slightly and said, Junior did have some thoughts before, but those thoughts were based on the fact that Wei Qing is a Fortune Gate disciple. Now that I've heard that there's actually a Daoist Grandmaster who could easily kill Crane Lord here, I suddenly feel that things aren't as simple as they seem. My thoughts are really superficial. Yi Guxing's yes sects, yi, s, yi, and yi, yes's sect s sects yes yi. Yi, as long as t, yes shues yi. Yi Shixiang pondered for a moment before pointing at the sword formation and said, although the Heavenly Patrol City's sword formation is impregnable, Senior Yi, don't forget that we sword cultivators are best at attacking. When there were Dao cultivators guarding the Heavenly Patrol City, they could use the formation to defend, but we sword cultivators can't. We sword cultivators must attack. Even if we fail to attack, the Heavenly Patrol City's sword formation can only be the last line of defense. We can't put the sword formation in front of us and hide behind it. That's right. Xueqing also clapped his hands and praised, Sword Friend Yi is right. The strongest defense is offense. I also suggest that we release the sword formation and let our Heavenly Patrol City swordsmen kill the Dao cultivators outside the sword formation. Since the Fortune Gate's disciples are here, let's let them have a taste of the power of our flying swords. Yi Guxing looked at Zhuang Hong and both of them exchanged glances. He nodded and said, Nephew Yi is right. While we defend the Heavenly Patrol City sword formation, we must take the initiative to attack and seize the initiative of the battle. I volunteer. Zhuang Hong raised his hand and said, I'll lead my Flying Feather Sect's disciples to guard the west gate of the Heavenly Patrol City and kill the Fortune Gate's disciples. I'll guard the north gate of the Heavenly Patrol City. Xueqing hurriedly said. Yi Guxing smiled and nodded. He looked at Yi Shixiang and said, Nephew Yi, there may be other sword transformation swordsmen in the Heavenly Patrol City, but no matter how strong they are, I can't entrust them to me. Therefore, I hope that your Yi clan can also take on the responsibility of guarding the Heavenly Patrol City. Yi Shixiang hesitated for a moment and nodded solemnly. If that's the case, Junior Yi Shixiang swears to the heavens that I won't disappoint Senior Yi. Nephew Yi, you don't have to do this. Yi Guxing felt more assured after hearing Yi Shixiang's oath. He hurriedly waved his hand and said, I've already said that I believe you. Which direction do you want to guard? Junior. Yi Shixiang was about to speak, but when he looked up, he saw Fairy Hongxia and the others flying over. He rolled his eyes and hurriedly said in a low voice, Since I've invited the Dao cultivators' disciples to help, I can't let them fight the Fortune Gate's disciples. How about this, I'll lead the Yi clan's disciples and the 4 Dao cultivators' disciples to the north gate of the Heavenly Patrol City. Xueqing frowned, but he immediately understood. The north gate of the Heavenly Patrol City was besieged by the Fortune Gate's disciples. Yi Shixiang was not targeting him. He nodded and said, If that's the case, I'll guard the south gate of the Heavenly Patrol City. Yi Guxing was not in a hurry to answer. Instead, he narrowed his eyes and looked at Fairy Hongxia and the others who were flying over and said, Nephew Yi, who are these disciples? Liang's Kai clan, Su Yenyun's clan, Fallen Gold Mountain's Yu clan, and Tianmen Mountain's Wang clan. Yi Shixiang did not hide anything and answered truthfully. Yi Guxing nodded, they're not big families. I'm sure Nephew Yi can control them well. Don't worry, Senior Yi. Yi Shixiang said indifferently, Junior wouldn't have dared to speak if I wasn't confident. They're just a few golden core cultivators, Senior Yi doesn't care about them, right? Hee, if that's the case, I'll leave the north gate of the Heavenly Patrol City to Nephew Yi. Yi Guxing smiled and said meaningfully, I'll guard the west gate of the Heavenly Patrol City. I'd like to see who's the mastermind behind the Fortune Gate. Let's go. Yi Shixiang did not delay, he raised his hand and ordered, Yi clan's disciples, follow me to the north gate, wait. Seeing that Yi Shixiang was about to leave, Yi Guxing hurriedly stopped him and said, Nephew Yi, you haven't received my Heavenly Patrol City's City Lord token, how can you guard the north gate of the Heavenly Patrol City? Hee. Yi Shixiang scratched his head awkwardly and said with a smile, Junior was impulsive and forgot about this matter. Sword Master, please give me the order. Good. Yi Guxing was even more relieved. He raised his hand and took out another small golden sword and handed it to Yi Shixiang. Yi Shixiang, I order you to guard the north gate of the Heavenly Patrol City and take my place as the Sword Master. Yes, Junior will obey. Yi Shixiang put away his embarrassment and respectfully accepted the City Lord token. He led the Yi clan's disciples and flew to the north gate of the Heavenly Patrol City. At this time, Fairy Hong Xia and the other Yi clan's disciples came to greet them. Before Fairy Hong Xia could speak, Xiao Mao, who was beside her, hurriedly asked, Young Master, what happened? I heard that someone has surrounded the Heavenly Patrol City. He. Yi Shixiang smiled and said, Don't worry, it's not a Dao sword battle. If it was a Dao sword battle, how could you all be standing here? I've just found out that the east, west, and south gate of the Heavenly Patrol City are filled with Dao cultivator disciples, but the north gate is filled with sword cultivator disciples. I'm guessing that some cultivators who have a grudge against the Mountain Patrol Sword Sect, Soaring Feather Sect, and Quilted Mountain Sect have surrounded the Heavenly Patrol City to cause trouble. Then what should we do? Fairy Hong Xia frowned and said, Although it's not a Dao sword battle, we're Dao cultivator disciples. Now that we're in the Heavenly Patrol City, it's not good. Fairy, don't worry. Yi Shixiang looked at Fairy Hong Xia and said, Even if I'm injured, I won't let you lose a single hair. I've already volunteered to guard the north gate of the Heavenly Patrol City. We'll go out and set up a formation to fight against the unknown sword cultivators. Then, take advantage of the chaos, Fairy and the rest can leave first. Oh, right, the number of sword cultivators in the north gate of the Heavenly Patrol City has decreased by a lot. All right. Fairy Hong Xia was confused. At this time, she could only look at Xiao Mao, who was also confused, and nodded. Then we'll listen to young Master Ye's arrangements. Young Master Yi. While they were talking, Yun Jichong flew over from another direction in a hurry. Before he got close, he shouted loudly, What's going on? Is it another Dao sword battle? He. Yi Shixiang's face showed a trace of awkwardness. He ignored Yun Jichong and turned to Fairy Hong Xia and said, Fairy, I can't help it. This is all my family's old man's arrangement, it's okay. Fairy Hong Xia was already prepared. With a faint carefree expression, she said, Both our families have the right to choose. Patriarch Yun. Yi Shixiang nodded at Fairy Hong Xia apologetically. Then, he flew up and said to Yun Jichong, I don't know the details of the situation. I've already taken the Sword Master's token arrow. It won't be too late for us to go to the north gate of the Heavenly Patrol City first. Young Master Yi. Almost at the same time, from the other two sides, a male cultivator who looked as proud as a pine tree and a young and beautiful woman who was as young and beautiful as the morning sun, spoke. P.S. Fellow Taoists who like this book, please subscribe to it at Qidian, vote for it, give it a recommendation vote, bookmark it, and reward it. Thank you for all forms of support. Thanks to fellow Taoists like Benbin, Rogue Hero, Kai Kai and the Rain, Lonely Asylum, Theblisky 1, Yong Chang, Honghua, Heaven Defying Radish, Tao Master, Deep Breath, and Ferlin for their rewards. Today, I'll add more chapters for all of you. At the same time, I'd like to thank everyone who follows the path of spirit cultivation. Fellow Taoist strong support and tireless reading gave me the strength to write. Chapter 5177. Seeing this, Yi Shixiang became even more embarrassed. He rubbed his nose, looked at Fairy Hong Xia, then looked at Yun Guichong, and said, Please wait a moment, these are the other two cultivation families. Without waiting for Yi Shixiang to finish his words, the beautiful woman exuding a fiery aura immediately called out, Fairy Hong Xia, why are you here? You are. Fairy Hongxia asked curiously as she looked at this woman who was only at the Golden Core advanced stage. However, her beauty was not inferior to her own. Seeing that Fairy Hongxia did not recognize her, the female cultivator raised her eyebrows and was somewhat unhappy. Her cherry-red lips curled as she said, I am Huang Mingxiang, the head of Tianmen Mountain's Huang clan. Huang Mingxiang. The more Fairy Hongxia heard, the more confused she became. She thought for a moment, but could not think of any entanglements between her and Tianmen Mountain's Huang clan. However, she still cupped her hands and said, so it's Daoist Huang, I greet you. Greetings, greetings. Huang Mingxiang did not have the awareness of meeting a nascent soul senior. It was as if Fairy Hongxia was his enemy, and casually cupped his hands as a form of greeting. Fairy Hongxia was very attentive. She looked around and saw that only she and Huang Mingxiang were female cultivators. She laughed and said, it seems like Daoist Huang doesn't like me. I don't know if it's because my Kai clan offended Tianmen Mountain, or because my Huanhua sect disturbed Tianmen Mountain. No matter who it is, I will apologize on their behalf. It's their fault for making a beauty like you angry. Hee hee. Huang Mingxiang was an extrovert, so when she heard Fairy Hongxia praising her beauty, she smiled and flew in front of Fairy Hongxia and said, how can this concubine compare to Big Sister Ah? You are the most beautiful female cultivator in my country of Shi, sweat. Not to mention the others, Xiao Mao's forehead was covered in sweat. For some reason, he suddenly thought of his Daoist companion, Qin Jian, who always liked to let him praise her beauty. Not to mention the two beautiful women chattering, Yi Shixiang hurriedly greeted the other man and cupped his hands, I'm sorry, Daoist you, I've startled you. Yu Tong. Before the man could speak, surprise flashed in Yun Jichong's eyes as he cried out, You! Why are you here? After he finished speaking, Yun Jichong looked thoughtfully at Yi Shixiang and sneered, Young Lord Yi, your appetite is really not small ah. Previously, this Yun thought that only Lu Yang's Kai family and Yi family were discussing an alliance. Who would have thought that the Yu family of Fallen Gold Mountain was also involved? The one that I don't recognize is actually also from the Huang family of the Heavenly Gate Mountain in the country of Shi. Ha ha. Yi Shixiang smiled and said to Yu Tong and Yun Jichong who were already standing in front of him, everyone here is an elite from the aristocratic families of the three kingdoms. If it was before, your four clans might not have thought of forming an alliance, let alone sitting together to discuss the details. And now, with my Yi clan as the middleman, the four clans may not have formed an alliance with my Yi clan yet. But, from the current situation, the possibility of an alliance is extremely high. Since my Yi clan has formed an alliance with your four clans, why can't our five clans form an even bigger alliance? I won't hide it from everyone. My Yi clan's patriarch has already vaguely revealed that he will continue to push this alliance forward. With our five clans as the core, he will attract even more aristocratic families of Dao and sword cultivators. In the end, we will form the largest alliance in Dawn Rain Continent, hiss. Yun Jichong knew that Yi Shixiang was lying, but he still couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. The weeds in his heart also grew wildly. He couldn't help but look at Yu Tong. However, the moment his gaze landed on Yu Tong, he was immediately pierced back by Yu Tong's awe-like gaze. Yun Jichong was startled and quickly swept his gaze over. Sure enough, Yi Shixiang was looking at him meaningfully as if he wanted to see something from his eyes. Damn it! Yun Jichong cursed in a low voice, this Yi Shixiang is truly sinister. He doesn't know who is behind this Yun. It seems like he wants to use words to force this Yun to reveal a flaw. This Yun almost exposed myself just now. Cough cough. Yu Tong coughed lightly and said calmly, Young Lord Yi, this matter is too important and far exceeds this Yu's expectations. Of course, since we've already come this far, it's not impossible to take another step forward. However, no matter what, it's not too late to talk about this after we've overcome today's crisis, right? This you heard that Sky Patrol City has already been surrounded by many cultivators. At this point, Yu Tong didn't say anything else. He only looked at Yi Shixiang and quietly waited for him to speak. Yi Shixiang sneered in his heart as he looked at Yu Tong. He understood that Yu Tong was the person that Yun Jichong mentioned. As the Yi clan's young lord, Yi Shixiang didn't know, but as the Yi clan's patriarch, Yi Yaotian, he knew very well. He also knew that the reason why Yu Tong cooperated with him and the reason why the immortal emissary behind Yu Tong chose him wasn't only because the emissary might know about the Yi clan's background, but also because he could complete the mission that they couldn't in Sky Patrol City. Unfortunately, until now, Yi Yaotian, who was pretending to be Yi Shixiang, still didn't know where the emissary was, nor did he know what the emissary's objective was. However, Yi Shixiang knew that the emissary had endless means and he couldn't ruin the emissary's plans. He could only seek the greatest benefits in this crack. Therefore, Yi Shixiang smiled and said, "Fellow Daoist Yu, please forgive me for this matter. It's too sudden and I've only just found out. However, I've already obtained the Sword Master token from the 3 Sword Masters in Sky Patrol City. I'm going to bring my Yi clan's disciples to set up a sword formation outside Sky Patrol City to fight the invading sword cultivators to the death. If fellow Daoist Yu is willing, I welcome the Yu clan's disciples from Fallen Gold Mountain to fight the enemy together." This. Yu Tong was overjoyed, but he revealed a hesitant expression. He turned around for a moment and then nodded, "Since we're already on the same boat, even if my Yu clan wants to retreat, I'm afraid it won't work, right?" Ha! Yi Shixiang clapped and laughed. "Fellow Daoist Yu is indeed a forthright cultivator. This Yi is very gratified to be able to get to know someone like you. Since fellow Daoist Yu is giving me face, this Yi will agree to the conditions you mentioned earlier on behalf of my family head." "Many thanks." Yu Tong's joy didn't show on his face as he said indifferently and raised his hand, "This Yu will represent my Yu clan and form an alliance with the Yi clan to fight the enemy together." "Exactly." Yi Shixiang didn't hesitate to raise his hand and hit Yu Tong's hand as he shouted, "Only true allies who have gone through the test of blood and fire. This Yi will never forget being able to form an alliance with fellow Daoist Yu under such circumstances." "Good." Yun Jichong also pretended to have his blood boiling as he raised his hand and said, "This Yun is also willing to form an alliance with the Yi clan on behalf of my Yun clan." "Great." Yi Shixiang immediately raised his other hand and said, "Fellow Daoist Yun, just based on these words of yours, my Yi clan will agree to all the conditions you mentioned earlier. Come, let us form an alliance." Paw. With a soft sound, the seemingly sincere alliance was finally formed. But in reality, it wasn't even a superficial alliance. Then, the 3 of them looked at Fairy Red Dawn and Huang Mingxiang. "Big sister." Huang Mingxiang's eyes were filled with passion and excitement. She looked at Fairy Hongxia and said, "How about we form an alliance as well?" Fairy Hongxia pondered for a moment before smiling and nodding, "Since that's the case, as you wish." As she spoke, she also raised her jade-like hand. Paw. Huang Mingxiang unrestrainedly slapped Fairy Hongxia's hand and said with a smile, "My Tianmen Mountain's Huang family will form an alliance with Luyang's Kai family." Soon after, Huang Mingxiang glanced at Yi Shixiang and the others and said, "Young Master Yi, I also agree to form an alliance. Where is your sincerity?" "Oh." Yi Shixiang blinked his eyes and retracted his hand. He lowered his head and looked at it seriously before saying self-mockingly, "Since we're forming an alliance, why don't we strike our palms to make an oath? Humph. Huang Mingxiang snorted coldly and said, don't think of taking advantage of us. Ha! Yi Shixiang laughed loudly and said, this Yi is just joking with fellow Daoist Huang. Since fellow Daoist Huang and Fairy Hongxia are willing to form an alliance with my Yi clan will also agree to all the conditions you mentioned earlier. That's more like it. Huang Mingxiang's large eyes were like fine wine that had been brewed for 100 years. Anyone who saw it would be intoxicated. She said with a smile, such forthrightness is what a great man should be like. Now you can be considered as a small half of a male cultivator that can enter my eyes. Oh. Yi Shixiang smiled bitterly and said curiously, this you will probably be punished by the Yi clan's patriarch for giving in like this. This is only a small half of a male cultivator in your eyes. Then, what is a male cultivator that can enter your eyes like? In this world. Huang Mingxiang's eyes flitted past Fairy Hongxia and paused for a moment. Then, she looked towards the horizon and muttered, I'm afraid there's no longer a man as imposing as him. Thump. An indescribable feeling emerged from Fairy Hongxia's heart. Fairy Hongxia suddenly understood why Huang Mingxiang recognized her the moment they met. Moreover, under the seemingly harmonious atmosphere, there was also a volcanic jealousy. Of course, this was only Fairy Hongxia's feeling. Yi Shixiang asked with interest, Io, who is this man? Will this Yi be fortunate enough to know? Hee, I won't tell you. Suddenly, the yearning expression on Huang Mingxiang's face disappeared like the wind. A charming smile appeared on her face and she said, I'll let you guess with all your might. Vote for it, give it a recommendation vote, bookmark it, tip it. Thank you for all forms of support. Thanks to fellow Taoists like Benbin, Rogue Hero, Kai Kai and the Rain, Lonely Asylum, Theblisky 1, Yong Chang, Red Fire, Heaven Defying Radish, Dao Sovereign, Deep Breath, Ferlin, Su Ji, and other fellow Taoists for their tips. Today, I'll add more chapters for you. At the same time, I'd like to thank everyone who follows the path of spirit cultivation. Fellow Taoists' great support and tireless reading gave me the strength to write. Chapter 5178. With that, Huang Mingxiang pulled Fairy Hongxia's hand and said with a smile, Let's go, sister. Let's lead the disciples to defend against the enemy. I'd like to see which sword cultivator is so bold to attack my Sky Patrol city. All right. Fairy Hongxia looked at Huang Mingxiang's carefree manner and secretly scolded herself for being suspicious. She smiled and said, Sister will fight a bloody battle with you today. Then, Fairy Hongxia and Huang Mingxiang led the few disciples from the Kai and Huang clan to the north gate of Sky Patrol City. Yi Shixiang and Yun Guichong looked at each other with smiles on their faces. Yi Shixiang stole a glance at Yutong. Although Yutong was facing the direction where Fairy Hongxia and the rest disappeared, his lips were moving slightly as if he was transmitting a message. Yi Shixiang reminded him, Fellow Daoist Yu, Fairy Hongxia and fellow Daoist Huang have already left. This is what it means to be a woman who is not inferior to a man. We can't let others look down on us. Yutong stopped transmitting his message and looked at Yi Shixiang with a smile, Fellow Daoist Yun and I have to work hard. We can't even compare to that small half. Ha ha ha. Yi Shixiang laughed even louder. He moved his body and chased after Fairy Hongxia while shouting, Yes, you have to work hard. Fellow Daoist Yu, please. Yun Guichong raised his hand and invited Yutong to go first. Yutong smiled and said, Let's go together. All right. Yun Guichong nodded. The two of them also led their disciples and followed behind Yi Shixiang. After the Yun and Yu clan disciples left, the other Yi clan disciples followed behind. With the Sword Master token, Yi Shixiang could easily control the sword cultivators at the north gate of Sky Patrol City. He first understood the specific situation and said to the sword cultivator guarding the north gate of Sky Patrol City, "Sword Master Yi thinks highly of me and I've accepted the task of guarding the north gate of Sky Patrol City. But don't worry, I know my limits and will definitely not interfere with your defensive sword formation. I just want you to hand over the swordsmen outside the defensive sword formation to me. I'll lead them to set up the formation outside Sky Patrol City and have a life and death battle with the enemy cultivators surrounding the city." The patrolling sword sect's disciple guarding the northern gate was even more straightforward and nimble. After hearing Yi Shixiang's words, he immediately sent out the order. Approximately several thousand sword cultivators flew over from various places to await Yi Shixiang's orders. Of course, Yi Shixiang knew that the north side of Sky Patrol City would not only have a few sword cultivators, but he did not ask too much. He also led the thousands of sword cultivators and Yi clan disciples out of Sky Patrol City. After flying for more than 10 miles and seeing that they were about to pass by several mountain peaks, Yun Jicheng hurriedly transmitted a message to Yi Shixiang to stop. Yi Shixiang looked meaningfully at the mountains below him that looked like monsters that were accumulating power. A faint smile appeared on the corner of his mouth. He stopped and ordered everyone to stop as well. Everyone. Yi Shixiang pretended to release his divine sense and looked around before he said, "My celestial city is easy to defend and hard to attack. During the Great Sword Dao War back then, my sword cultivators spent a lot of effort to take over Celestial City. So today, if we were in your shoes, we definitely can't let the same thing happen again. We must kill the enemy outside the sword formation. Young Lord Yi." The leader of the sword cultivators hesitated for a moment before he said, "I don't know if you've received the message, but there are probably hundreds of thousands of enemy cultivators outside the northern gate of Sky Patrol City. We're only several thousand sword cultivators. How can we be their match? 10 million ants are coming to ambush Sky Patrol City. Will you be afraid?" Yi Shixiang glanced at the sword cultivator and asked. The sword cultivator was stunned and shook his head. "I won't be afraid even if there are 10 times more ants, let alone 10 million. Will you be afraid if there are 1 million sword cultivators?" Yi Shixiang continued to ask. 1 million. The sword cultivator hesitated for a moment before he answered, "Although I feel that I can definitely kill my way out of 1 million sword cultivators, 1 million is too many. I dare not estimate. What if we accompany you to face 1 million sword cultivators?" Yi Shixiang asked loudly. "I'm not afraid." The sword cultivator suddenly understood something and shouted back, "If young lord and all of you are here, how can I be afraid?" "That's right." Yi Shixiang raised his hand and pointed into the distance. "I'm not afraid to tell you that the sword cultivators approaching from there are at most at the level of drawing sword. No matter how many of them there are, how can they break through Sky Patrol City? I'm still young and have many pleasures to enjoy. If it's dangerous to come out of Sky Patrol City, how can I risk my life to come out? Don't worry, I have my Yi clan's secret sword formation here. You just have to follow the sword formation and wait to kill the enemy cultivators and perform meritorious deeds for Sky Patrol City, right?" Great. The sword cultivator was overjoyed and cupped his hands. "We'll be counting on you, young lord." "Well said." Yi Shixiang nodded and took out a dozen jade slips and handed them to the sword cultivator. "This is the method to set up the formation. Fellow Daoist, please distribute it to the team leaders. We'll quickly study it and prepare to set up the formation." Although Yi Shixiang's words were very encouraging, the Sky Patrol Sword Sect's disciples did not fully believe him. However, since Yi Shixiang, as the Yi clan's young lord, was going to face the enemy cultivators here, they had no reason to not come. Moreover, they believed Yi Shixiang's words, the enemy cultivators must be low-level disciples. Otherwise, it would be impossible for there to be such a shocking number. While the group of sword cultivators were studying the sword formation, Yi Shixiang also gave a few jade slips to Fairy Hongxia, Huang Mingxiang, Yu Tong, Yun Jicheng, and the others. After a meal, everyone finished reading. Yi Shixiang said in a low voice, "Everyone, this formation is divided into 2 layers, the inner and outer formation. We have fewer people, so we'll gather in the inner formation. The sword cultivators of Sky Patrol City will be scattered in the outer formation. Of course, the number of sword cultivators in the inner formation cannot be too small. We need to draw out nearly 1,000 sword cultivators from Sky Patrol City and transfer them into the inner formation. However, these sword cultivators cannot be led by us. They must be led by the patriarchs. Firstly, it can increase the power of the inner formation. Secondly, it can protect the patriarchs. What do you all think?" At this point, Yi Shixiang hesitated for a moment. He flicked his 10 fingers and a simple sword formation was set up. Yi Shixiang hurriedly said, "Most importantly, if there's an opportunity during the battle, you all can mobilize these sword cultivators to face the enemy cultivators. Let them hold the enemy cultivators back while you all can easily escape." Young Lord Yi. Huang Mingxiang's eyes were filled with surprise as he cried out, "You really move me. If I didn't have someone else in my heart, I would definitely treat you as my ideal Dao companion." Fairy Hongxia's heart shuddered for no reason. Yi Shixiang also didn't know whether to laugh or cry as he waved his hand and said, "Forget it. I'll just be the shorty in your eyes. I already have someone in my heart." As he spoke, Yi Shixiang actually glanced at Fairy Hongxia without any scruples. Fairy Hongxia was a little distracted and didn't seem to notice it. On the contrary, when Xiao Mao saw the desire in Yi Shixiang's eyes, he couldn't help but be alarmed and secretly knew that things weren't looking good. "Thank goodness, thank goodness." Huang Mingxiang clapped his hands in relief and said, "I didn't hurt anyone." Yi Shixiang shook his head helplessly and removed the simple and crude sword formation. He said, "I believe everyone has already seen the sword formation. Now, I will be bold enough to assign the locations that the patriarchs will guard." Yu Tong nodded and said, "Young Lord Yi, please. After all, this is the Yi clan's sword formation." "Yes, young Lord Yi, please quickly say it." Huang Mingxiang's voice was so sweet that it made Yi Shixiang's hair stand on end. Yi Shixiang perked up and pointed out the details of the sword formation and the locations that the 5 patriarchs will guard. Finally, he specially looked at Yun Guicheng and said, "Fellow Daoist Yun, is there anything you don't understand?" Everything that Yi Shixiang said was naturally taught by Yun Guicheng. How could he have any doubts? However, Yun Guicheng still pretended to ask a few questions. Then, Yi Shixiang looked at Yu Tong and said meaningfully, "Fellow Daoist Yu, is there anything else you want to ask?" He. When Yu Tong saw that Yi Shixiang immediately asked him after Yun Guicheng, he already had some understanding in his heart. He smiled and said, "I don't have any special questions. However, when I look at this sword formation, the entire formation looks like a plum blossom in the snow with 5 petals. These 5 petals floating in the air will certainly be beautiful, but if it's used to kill enemies, it will appear to have no foundation. I wonder where the center of this sword formation will be located?" Yi Shixiang pretended to be astonished and looked at Yu Tong. He gave him a thumbs up and said, "I really didn't expect fellow Daoist Yu to be a formation expert. When ordinary sword cultivators see my Yi clan sword formation, they would think that these 5 sword petals are 5 different formation cores. They can't tell at all. Since it's shaped like a plum blossom, it should have a root. As he spoke, Yi Shixiang pointed at a mountain peak not far away and said with a smile, "That place. I've already looked at it earlier. That place is the best place to be the foundation of the sword formation." When Yun Guichong heard this, he revealed a faint smile. That mountain peak was where he and Yutong had deliberately set up the four-spirit blood curse. Yun Guichong couldn't help but glance at Yutong. Because the materials needed to set up the four-spirit blood curse were extremely rare, the Yun clan and Yu clan had spent a lot of effort to gather them. As for setting up the formation, although it looked simple, it was troublesome because they didn't know where to set up the formation in order to lure Fairy Hong Xia into the formation. Previously, the two of them had also discussed capturing her by force. However, just as Yutong said, that kind of bloodline would be greatly reduced and wouldn't be able to sanctify their bloodline. That was why they chose to cooperate with the Yi clan. P.S. Fellow Taoists who like this book, please go to Qidian to subscribe to support, vote for a monthly vote for a recommendation vote, bookmark, tip, and thank you for all forms of support. Thanks to fellow Taoists like Benbin, Rogue Hero, Kai Kai and the Rain, Lonely Asylum, Theblisky 1, Yong Chang, Honghua, Heaven Defying Radish, Dao Sovereign, Deep Breath, Ferlin, Su Ji, and other fellow Taoists for their tips. Today, I'll add more chapters for all of you. At the same time, I'd like to thank everyone who follows the path of spirit cultivation. Fellow Taoists' strong support and tireless reading gave me the strength to write. Chapter 5179. The Sky Patrol City was designated by the Yi clan. Although Yun Guichong did not know why the Yi clan designated the Sky Patrol City, he knew that it was extremely difficult to set up the Four Spirits blood curse under the nose of a sword cultivator outside the Sky Patrol City. He and Yutong looked all around Sky Patrol City, but they did not find a suitable place. The Sky Patrol City was easy to defend and difficult to attack. It was surrounded by snow and abyss, covered with ice and snow. It was not a suitable place to set up the Four Spirits blood curse. However, just when the two of them were at their wits' end, Yun Jichung thought of the Tianyi Cyan light sword formation set up by the sword cultivators during the Great War of the Sword Principles. Hence, he whimsically suggested that Yutong explore the vicinity of Sky Inspect City. Sure enough, hard work paid off. They finally found a suitable place outside the north gate of Sky Inspect City. This place was very close to the Sky Patrol City's city wall. It was almost always under the supervision of sword cultivator patrolling disciples. It was extremely difficult to set up the formation. However, Yutong and Yun Guichong were even more excited when they saw this. The more difficult it was, the less likely the Yi clan would find out about their purpose and spoil their plans. Hence, the seemingly simple formation in the end took a lot of effort from Yun Guichong and Yutong. However, Yun Guichong said to himself proudly, "The most difficult part is over. In another 2 hours, the Four Spirits blood curse can be activated. By then, Yutong and I will." When he thought of this, a trace of gloom appeared in Yun Guichong's heart again. He glanced at Yutong. Although he had been very close to Yutong after forming an alliance with him in the Sword Tomb, he had been very close to Yutong. In the next 1,000 years, he had also received a lot of guidance from Yutong and gained a lot of benefits. It could be said that without Yutong, Yun Guichong would not be able to conceive a baby. However, Yun Guichong always had a suspicion that he might be used by Yutong. If that was the case, Yun Guichong had no basis at all. Whether it was setting up the formation or the choice of location, it was all decided by him. He and Yutong set up the formation together. Most of the time, he even set it up himself. Yun Guichong had secretly tried to set up the Four Spirits blood curse. All the effects were exactly the same as what Yutong said. All the abnormalities of the blood curse were the same as what Yutong said. He had no reason to doubt Yutong. Let's fight. Yun Guichong secretly clenched his teeth. This is an opportunity. If I can sanctify the true spirit bloodline to the Holy Spirit bloodline, not only will I be able to achieve the spirit severing stage, but even the fusion stage will not be a dream. While Yun Jicheng was pondering, Yi Shixiang also asked Fairy Hongxia and Huang Mingxiang. At this moment, the disciples of the mountain patrolling Sword Gate had also flown over. Yi Shixiang explained the reason why the sword cultivators were transferred to the inner formation. The group leaders did not have any objections and respectively sent 300 sword cultivator disciples to the Kai, Yu, Yun, and Huang families. After all, they also understood the sword array and knew about the inner array. These aristocratic families had too few people. Furthermore, with sword cultivators around these aristocratic families, they could also feel safe. In the end, Yi Shixiang had the demeanor of a great general and divided the remaining several thousand sword cultivators into 5 groups, which corresponded to the 5 influential families in the inner formation. Woo-woo. Just as Yi Shixiang finished distributing the disciples, he heard a gust of chilly wind mixed with broken sword intent gushing out from the distant horizon. These sword intents broke through the wind and snow and hit the cloudy sky. Not only did hundreds of whirlpools appear in the sky, even the mountain peaks near the sky patrolling city trembled slightly. Immediately, in the vast land, layers of sword chi gradually emerged. These sword chi were like waves in the depths of the sea, rising from afar and spreading towards the sky patrolling city. In front of these waves, there were dozens or even hundreds of sword cultivators urging their sword lights. They were like seagulls chasing after the tide, soaring wantonly and unyieldingly. Yi Shixiang's gaze swept across and immediately ordered, "Everyone, the enemy cultivators are approaching. The patrolling disciples of the sky patrolling city should also return. Let's quickly set up the formation." Yes. Thousands of sword cultivators from the sky patrolling city and hundreds of disciples from the 5 influential families followed the previous discussion and arrangement. They seemed to be in a hurry, but they also flew in an orderly manner. At the same time, in other places of the sky patrolling city, more sword cultivator disciples could be seen flying out of the sky patrolling city. Just like Yi Shixiang's arrangement, they formed different sword formations. Although these sword formations were not linked together, as the sword intent spread, they had already completely covered the outside of the sky patrolling city. Young Lord. Seeing that the sword formation was about to be completed, Xiao Mao suddenly flew over and said in a low voice, "I invited Fairy Hongxia here. If anything happens to her in the battle, I won't be able to live with myself. Therefore, I want to go into the Kai family sword formation." Yi Shixiang was not surprised. He glanced at Xiao Mao and said, "I can understand your feelings, but you're not even a nascent soul cultivator. Won't you be causing trouble for them if you go?"
"Whether I can protect her or not is up to me," Xiao Mao replied, "but whether I go or not, is up to me." Then go." Yi Shixiang waved his hand and said with a smile, "I can rest assured if you go and protect Fairy Hongxia." "Thank you, young lord." After Xiao Mao expressed his gratitude, he hurriedly left. Yi Shixiang looked at Xiao Mao's back and a faint smile once again appeared on his lips. In just half a meal's time, the plum blossom-shaped sword formation had already begun to take shape. The sword intent on the inner and outer layers were like plum blossoms in full bloom. One layer after another, it enveloped the surrounding dozens of li and intertwined with the sword intent from other places nearby. Wherever the sword chi covered, the solid ice on the mountain peak began to crack. The previously scattered snowflakes had already disappeared. The sword intent surged into the sky and tore apart the dark clouds bit by bit. Light began to seep through the dark clouds as if the sun would shoot out at any time. Just as everyone was activating the sword chi, Yi Shixiang suddenly frowned and shouted, "Not good." Yu Tong and Yun Jicheng were shocked. They asked almost at the same time, "What's wrong?" Although this sword formation will increase the stability of the sword formation based on whether it's on the mountain peak, the sword formation is slightly far away from the other sword formations. The sword intent won't be able to integrate well with the sword intent of the other sword formations. It's not good for the defense of Sky Patrol City. Yi Shixiang pretended to be serious as he explained. Damn it. Yu Tong and Yun Jicheng cursed at the same time. They looked at each other. Yun Jicheng suppressed the anger in his heart and said softly, "According to young lord, how should we deal with it?" Yi Shixiang smiled and pointed to a mountain peak at the side. "I think that mountain peak is better." Yun Jicheng's expression changed greatly when he heard this. He looked at Yi Shixiang, who was causing trouble, and gritted his teeth in hatred. Unfortunately, Yi Shixiang was the one in charge of the city lord token now. Moreover, Yi Shixiang was right. When the sword formation was here, there were indeed some sword intents that were fused, and there were many places where the sword intent was thin. Senior Marshal Brother Yu. Yun Jicheng hurriedly transmitted his voice to ask. Yu Tong bit his lips tightly and seemed to be at his wit's end. He opened his mouth and wanted to transmit his voice to Yi Shixiang, but he closed his mouth in the end. Yi Yao Tian was currently Yi Shixiang. He could do anything he wanted. Even if Immortal Emissary 1 blamed him, Yi Yao Tian would push the blame to Yi Shixiang for being insensible. Moreover, Yu Tong really didn't want to ruin his years of hard work. After thinking for a moment, Yu Tong transmitted his voice. "Let's see what happens to Yi Shixiang first. We'll adapt according to the situation."
That's the only way. Yun Jicheng was even more furious than Yu Tong, but he also couldn't do anything. Yi Shixiang didn't hide his words from the others, so the other sword cultivators in Sky Patrol City also understood. They didn't have any objections. After Yi Shixiang gave the order, they all flew towards the other mountain peak. The two mountain peaks looked like they were only a few miles apart, but they didn't move an inch. Yun Jicheng's heart was bleeding. Junior Marshal Brother Yun. Yu Tong's voice suddenly came quietly. "Quickly get Yun Xiaoying and 2 or 3 other Yun family disciples to come to this Yu." Ah. Yun Jicheng was a little stunned. He looked up at Yu Tong, who was not far away from him on his right. At this moment, behind Yu Tong, among the sword cultivators, several Yu family disciples concealed their figures and were flying towards the Yun family where Yun Jicheng was. Among these disciples, Yu Yusong could be seen. Although Yun Jicheng was puzzled, he didn't dare to be negligent. He hurriedly transmitted his voice and instructed Yun Xiaoying to bring a few disciples to the sword formation where the Yu family disciples were. Yi Shixiang had long been paying attention to the actions of the Yu family and Yun family. He had already seen the movements of these disciples. However, like Yun Jicheng, he was very puzzled. He didn't know what the exchange of these disciples was for. However, since Yi Shixiang had already violated the agreement, and Yun Jicheng and Yu Tong had responded like this, he couldn't say anything else. Unless he really wanted to fall out with them. Since Yi Shixiang didn't say anything, the other sword cultivators naturally wouldn't care. In just the time it took for an incense stick to burn, the entire sword formation had been transferred to a new mountain peak. At this moment, just as Yi Shixiang had said, the sword intent of the sword formation was intertwined with the sword intent of the other sword formations like water and milk, perfectly protecting Sky Patrol City. As for Yun Jicheng, as his eyes turned rapidly, he quietly activated a trace of the true spirit Dharma body's power. He could vaguely feel the power of the blood curse. Although the power of the blood curse was weaker than before, he was finally relieved. Then, he looked at Yu Tong gratefully and transmitted his voice in a low voice. "It's all thanks to Senior Brother Yu. Haha, it's nothing." Yu Tong smiled and replied through voice transmission, "I didn't expect the Yi family's young master to change his mind at the last minute." Fortunately, the Ice Phoenix and Vermilion Bird and the Four Spirits blood curse didn't change. It's just that the Silver Tiger and the Flame Dragon swapped places, so the range of the blood curse tilted a little. It's just enough to deal with Yi Shixiang's willfulness. P.S. Fellow Taoists who like this book, please subscribe to it at Qidian, vote for it, give it a recommendation vote, bookmark it, and tip it. Thank you for all forms of support. Thank you to Benbin, Hooligan Hero, Kai Kai in the Rain, Lonely Asylum, Dublisky 1, and other fellow Taoists for their tips. Yong Chang, Honghua, Heaven-Defying Radish, Tao Master, Deep Breath, Ferlin, Su Ji, and other fellow Taoists for their tips. Today, I'll add more chapters for you. At the same time, I'd like to thank everyone who follows the path of spirit cultivation. Fellow Taoists, your strong support and tireless reading gave me the strength to write. You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.